Yeah. Huh?
Is the stream on?
Yeah, it is. What'd you say, Rez? What? Oh, yeah. All right.
My people missed the best part.
No, we're going to go through that whole thing again. We got to fill 3 hours.
People are going to be triggered by all this stuff on those pages. Just be ready. Be ready to get the phone calls.
Well, no, but it'd be helpful for you because my audience absolutely abhors Recode Knoxville. So as long as you're couching it within talking about Recode Knoxville, they really wouldn't care what you say about it.
It's something they don't like. If you never liked it, then violence is okay.
Yeah, usually. Anyways, hold on 2 seconds. Please don't paywall me. Yeah, that's right, New York Times. I hate you so much.
Yeah.
Anyways, one free article remaining. I'll use that one for this terrible article then. But Greg Samples, right? I heard him during a debate, and I could not have respected possibly any local politician more, but most certainly Greg Samples more than when he said this during the debate. It was the opening remarks or something, and without prompting, he said something to the effect of, look, I am under no this was 2nd District, right? Burchett, Matlock, they were basically the only two that anyone cared about. He said, I'm under no disillusions that I'm actually out here going to win this race. I'm not even technically trying to vie for your vote right now. What I'm trying to do is change hearts and minds. Now, here's where the cognitive dissonance comes in for me. About a month later, we had him on our program, and I feel like someone on his campaign forced him to walk that terminology back. And this is my opinion. I've not talked to Greg about this. Because I was asking him questions to try and probe that same response that I heard during the debates, and I just couldn't get him there. Because it's a losing strategy. To come out and say, I'm not working for your debate, well, no one's going to vote for you, you know? I mean... Real News. My name is Mr. Henry. Facebook. Goodness gracious. Are we doing this audio thing again, Facebook? Man, I'm telling you. All right, hang on 2 seconds. Roz, listen on Facebook back there. Somebody in Facebook, tell me what this audio is doing. Whatever. We'll get back to it later. Roz, can I get this computer going? Yeah. All right, so Rod Rosenstein said back in January that after the Mueller report was put out, he was going to resign. Well, the Mueller report has been put out, and yesterday he resigned. What are you shaking your head for? Huh?
Your audio sucks. I can't hear it.
Nuh-uh, not at all.
Yeah, no, it's like super light.
Are you? Come on.
Like if I had...
Wait, is it on that delay?
Uh-huh. It's really low.
It's good now. Is it really low?
Really bad, yeah.
All right. I'll figure it out during the break.
Daniel says it sounds like doo-doo.
He said quiet and distorted at the same time.
Quiet and distorted at the same time. That's probably the worst of the worst. Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, I'll figure something out.
Oh, you're getting angry reacts. Oh, no.
Am I?
Probably all from Daniel, too, who loves this show.
Yeah. I'm gonna try and figure this out. All right. Well, we got 3 minutes left, so bear with me, Facebook, for 3 minutes here because I'm going all over the place. All right. So Rod Rosenstein comes out and says that he's going to resign. Rod, is this computer good? Yeah. Yeah, we're going to pretend like it is anyways. Here's CNN trying to deal with this revelation yesterday.
In the covering up the idea potentially that he's leaving early. I love when they do. The median tenure of a deputy attorney general is 16 months, and few serve longer than 2 years, which is essentially, I'm not being forced out. Everything's cool. I'm leaving when they basically leave. But Jackie's point about him being an enigma is fascinating because he is the guy who establishes the special counsel. He is the guy who stays and kind of protects the special counsel broadly, Don McGahn also. But he's also the guy who, when Bill Barr gives the press conference before the Mueller report, an hour and a half before the Mueller report comes out, he's the guy doing this, standing next to him. And Barr says, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I decided jointly not to pursue obstruction. So you can, in some ways, you can make what you want of him. You can make him a hero or a devil either way in this story. But he's one thing you can't dispute. He's absolutely at the center of this. And now that it's concluded, at least that part of it, he's leaving. This is not.
All right, so the rest of the panel from CNN goes on and say the exact same thing. Well, we really don't know what to do with this guy. You can make him a devil. You can make him a goat. You can make him a hero. You can make him. I don't know. But what they start off with, they start off by saying that Rod Rosenstein was being pushed out, essentially, that he's leaving not on his own accord because it's now ramping up with the Mueller investigation being done. The House is wanting to have oversight. They're compelling all these documents. They're compelling people to come give testimony. Rod Rosenstein doesn't want to give testimony. And I'm the only one sitting back apparently wondering, Rod Rosenstein told us 3 months ago he was going to, from his own mouth, he's told us 3 months ago he was going to leave at this exact time. After the Mueller report was done, he was going to leave. He didn't want to muddy the Mueller report with speculation and nonsensical assertions about what he was or wasn't doing, what his thought was at the time. People that were familiar with Rod Rosenstein's line of thinking, he didn't want to deal with all of that nonsense. So he said, I'm going to let the Mueller report come out. I'll back my people for the time, and then I'm going to leave. Well, this sets up the scenario that I'm screaming about today, and I want Sherry's Voluntary's opinion on this. I don't know what to do with journalism anymore.
Anymore? You're just coming to this conclusion? I know what I did with it a long time ago.
But I just don't know what to do either with the disingenuous nature of how all of this stuff is covered.
Yeah, I mean, look, they just told you what it is. They don't know what the narrative is yet, so they don't know what to say about him. Like, that's the thing. Their guys haven't told them what the narrative is yet. They haven't gotten it from, if they're Republicans or Democrats, whatever, they're not clear on who this guy is to them, so they don't want to say anything yet because they've got to back up the narrative and they can't be seen to.
You're exactly right, Sherry, and that's what's so interesting and also frustrating about the new paradigm is the Twittersphere, if you want to call it that. I'm terrible at the new social media stuff. I don't know.
You're such an old man.
I don't know what the kids are using nowadays. Is it just Instagram or Snapchat? I don't know. But the point I'm making, Sherry, is that the nature by which, or the speed by which, rather, that we must immediately develop some sense of analysis or some thought on what a story is. That's what I think CNN is being trapped by. Because you're correct. They don't know what the narrative is supposed to be yet. Their producers are not in their ears saying, shut up about that. Don't say that. You need to say this.
He's our guy. You got to back him. Or he's the devil. You know.
Well, he was our guy before when it's all. He was our guy when special counsel was all of a sudden being assigned. He wasn't our guy prior to that when he was saying that James Comey was fired for logical reasons. We don't know who this guy is yet. And because it's a breaking story, either CNN said something about it now, or Twitter's going to run rampant and they're going to develop the analysis, and then we'll just be regurgitating what Twitter said before.
Because it's not about the facts.
Exactly.
It's about the narrative.
Yes. And that's what's so frustrating here is it's always been about the narrative. That is not anything new. What's new now is that we have major publications like New York Times and CNN that are running rampant with what the narrative is supposed to be before they've even developed what the narrative is. And now I get to this New York Times story that I'm going to come back with after we hit this break. This is no joke. Let me read this to you here, all right? The men at Fox News, and this is setting up the headline from the author that penned this op-ed. Can we please relax about socialism? It's coming from the New York Times.
Of course.
Yeah. Go tell a bunch of Venezuelans that, right? Venezuela, just calm down about socialism. It's not that bad. Right. Can we please relax about socialism from the New York Times? Here's the tweet. I'm not kidding. From the author. This is from the New York Times opinion Twitter account. The men at Fox News have a sickly obsession with Alexandria Cortez, partly because they resent her cleverness. Really? Charisma and her moral vitality, but mostly because they suspect that in high school she was one of those girls that they had no hope of getting a date with.
What?
I don't even know what that means.
Why do you have to make me sick at my stomach first thing in the morning?
Nick used to tell me the same things too. It's only 7:30. Can we at least hold off till 8:30? Right?
Let me get a biscuit in there or something first.
The reason why we're mad at socialism is basically because
that's the leftist argument always, though, is right. If you don't agree with something someone who happens to be homosexual is saying, then you're homophobic, right?
Yeah.
Or you're closeted gay, something like that's always they always try to make people feel ashamed of their point of view for some reason, and that's what they're saying is you're bad because you just wanted this girl and you couldn't have her, and now you hate her.
But the constant the constant and continual reliance upon ad hominem is destroying logic in this country. It's destroying people's ability to have analytical thought, and it's also destroying people's ability to have cordial conversations with their once used to be friends. Hey, it's 7:33. Be right back.
I know you.
You just wanted this girl, you couldn't have her, now you hate her.
But the constant and continual reliance upon ad hominem is destroying. All right, that's not bad. That's not bad audio for doing it on the fly.
Hey,
Did you see this?
oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
He didn't send me one. I'll tell you that. No, I went outside my principles to vote for the man. That was the first time I voted in years, and it will be the last.
Was it specifically for Lafferty and?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, I didn't vote for Lafferty, but
Uh-oh.
I did vote for. He's the only person I voted for.
Who? Glenn?
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
I mean, I know Justin, and I love Justin, but you know, I don't vote.
Yeah, I hear you.
And, you know, it was, I was of the opinion at the time that you do use the political system in self-defense. If, you know, I still wasn't really crazy about it, but I thought, well, people can do that if they want, and they do. But, it's not for me.
What, that's what's confused me about today, and maybe that's what I want to get back. I want to tie all this back with that Recode conversation, which will probably take us all the way into 8. But like the most typical thing that, and if you're one of Sherry's people, by the way, I'm not an ANCAP. I'm barely considered a libertarian. I called myself a libertarian in law school and realized that I meant something totally different when I come back here. I might consider myself a constitutionalist. Right? Sherry's trying to work on me, all right? So
I'm not trying.
If you take offense to something I say, it's nothing on Sherry, all right? This is why it's healthy for both of our audiences. Anyways, Sherry, one of the favorite things that Republicans love to do to these Bernie bros is give them all these man on the street interviews and ask them a whole series of questions and why do you support socialism, why do you support Bernie, and just hear their idiot responses and then follow up with the final thing of like, well, who'd you vote for? Well, I didn't vote. And then it supposedly, allegedly proves the entire Republican point of, who was it, Jefferson that said we don't have a democracy, we have a democracy of those that participate. It's a representative republic, I get that. But
the authority is the authority because people believe in it.
Believe in that authority?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but short of a violent revolution, what else do you do to change a system?
You do this.
Just educate?
Yes. You talk to people about their own morality.
But isn't somebody eventually going to have to, even if I educate, let's say I educate all of Knoxville, specifically about Recode, aren't they still going to have to use the current systems to at least change Recode, for one generation at least?
Houston doesn't have zoning laws. They do just fine.
Right, but what I'm asking is, didn't Houston for at least a single legislative season have to legislate to wipe out all those zoning laws?
I mean, that's one way to do it, I guess. I don't think you can legislate yourself free, though.
Yeah.
Neither did the founders. I mean, what you're doing is arguing against the founders, basically. Which, you know, that works for me. It's subsidiarity is the way to go. So it's like home rule, where you're close at home, and the people, it's supposed to be bottom up rulership. And that's how the founding fathers envisioned it. But it's, centralized power. Once you had the Constitution and centralized that power, it was all downhill from there.
Well, I mean, I kind of hear what you're saying when I tell people one of the bigger debates that the founding fathers had was whether we should even have a Bill of Rights. I think most people I say that to think I'm the crazy one, right? But I'm pretty sure that's
They
right.
should have stopped at the Declaration, and then let people live their lives, because people figure out how to work their communities. Like, that's the beauty of subsidiarity. Look at ancient Greece. Like,
See,
those small cities that dealt with their city, and then there was land outside of that where people could live outside of that, and there was another city that had a whole different culture.
I would have been okay with the Declaration, something articulating the 10th Amendment, something articulating in the most extreme occasions a federal allowance to coalesce state militias, the idea being for protection of our own borders or our own country, to get all the state militias together to form our own army, right? And yeah, it was. And in the most extreme occasions, when practicality makes it necessary, some very simple aspect of, you're not going to like this, the federal oversight on commerce exchange. The only reason why I say that is because I can imagine a nightmare scenario where all 50 states have 50 different versions of currency. It wouldn't be practical for the states to do that. I get that. But at the same time, I can imagine North Carolina having a North Carolina currency and a currency that works with other states.
You're talking about fiat. Like, most of the time, like, even when states did have different currencies, they were often, you could use them. And I can use American money in Canada.
Oh, sure.
Like,
yeah.
You can. That's such a. I mean, it's really a non-argument. People figure that stuff out because they work towards convenience.
See, but here's the other issue that I was reading some of the stuff you were sending me, and I did this thing called rabbit trailing on YouTube, where it's a related thing and a related thing and a related thing, and I eventually got into some Reddit article or something, and it was talking about the basic tenets of anarcho-capitalism. And a lot of them made sense to me, and some that didn't make sense to me were, I'm only held. It was you can hire arbiters, for example. Okay, if you have a contract and I have a contract, let's say it's an insurance policy or something. I run into the back of your car. You have insurance policy A, I have insurance policy B. You can hire an arbiter to figure that out at the end of the day. But ultimately, if our arbiter disagrees, or you disagree, or I disagree, there still needs to be some mechanism or some system by which there's an objective.
And there would be.
Coherence.
The only reason that you can't fathom that is because you believe in the monopoly of law, the state to have monopoly on law. But there are plenty of private courts right now that deal with these things. Like, you're talking about arbiters. There's other systems that people can use. They just don't, because the government, they do, but people don't know about it because the monopoly is by the state on law.
But it happens all the time even in our current system, like on a daily basis. It happens where someone, divorce, right, will set themselves up with an arbiter or a mediator to begin with, and they can't figure it out, so they're gonna have to take it to whatever the objective system is to say who's right and who's wrong.
And there could be another step in the process. Like that it doesn't mean that the state needs to do that.
See, and this is where I get confused again as to, aren't we just playing a semantic game at that point?
No.
Aren't we just trading one version of, we call something the state and we're mad about that? But if we're rising to the same level of objective interpretation of whatever the law might be, just because we're not calling it the state doesn't mean that it doesn't have the same oversight power as our current justice system does.
The state right now legislates from up there in Washington to down here in Knoxville with. They don't know anything about this area. They don't know anything about what's going on with you. Those are cookie cutter laws. They're not good for you.
That part's true, yeah. Court justice.
The state right now.
That's 7:42 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful Roz back there pushing the buttons, running the board, answering your phone calls on the Crown Plaza call number. That number is 865-888-TALK. It's 865-888-8255. Roz, do I need to worry about that? She's typing those in right now. All right, so here's what I left off with, the New York Times headline. And this tends to happen. If you're watching on Facebook, we're going back and forth between topics. We get off air, and then Sherry and I start doing the ANCAP stuff that we disagree about, and then we get back on air, and we're doing these other stories. Well, they'll merge together at some point. Take my word for it. All right. So here's where I'm coming from. New York Times sends this tweet out regarding this op-ed, and you can't hold him. You can hold him accountable, okay, to some extent. It's an op-ed, so I would hold David Hart more accountable than anybody else. But oh my Gosh, Ray, I'm going to go to Ray's calling here in a second. Roz, can I get this computer going in the meantime? Yeah, here's the New York Times op-ed. Can we please relax about socialism? Can we please relax about socialism? They throw this out there with this tweet behind it. The men of Fox News have a sickly obsession with Alexandria Cortez, partly because they resent her charisma, they resent her moral vitality, but mostly because they suspect that in high school, she was one of those girls they had no hope of dating.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Sure, but the point I'm trying to make is the games that are being played in journalism right now they're not just frustrating, they're not just unfortunate, they're not even just doing a disservice to the American people. I believe that there is a concerted effort to purposefully mislead, right? And
Absolutely. They're completely biased. Like everybody knows that, but then everybody goes and, well, this is the source on this, and they say this, so it's got to be true. Like, people want the things that buttress their own positions, but then they want to tell you, well, I won't accept your facts because they come from a source I don't like.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous, and you have to pick your way through it. It's not easy, and some are better than others, I guess, but it's all garbage, really. I mean, it's just biased. You got to pick your way through. You got to know what their biases are.
Right.
And you just have to think. Like, just now when you played them talking about the guy, I didn't talk to you about the position of the guy. I talked to you about what they're doing, and that's the narrative. Like, you've got to see below the surface of what they're actually trying to make you believe.
But people, they act upon these op-eds. They act upon these opinions. They act upon this style, or they act upon the New York Times. And part of me wants to say, well, justifiably so. It's the New York Times. What I've been told is one of the most prestigious institutions in the entire nation.
I mean, they're definitely resting on their laurels at this point.
Well, of course, and it's not just resting on their laurels. That would be one thing. It's almost to the other extent of, if you start out by telling me, and this is what I got from that tweet. If you start out by telling me the reason why I, as a cisgendered Caucasian male, have a problem with socialism, the only reason I could possibly have a problem with socialism is because I'm a sexist.
Right. Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, Look, they look at everything through that scope, though. They look at the optics of everything so that they can dismiss your real points, and they get you caught up in that. And, I mean, we're talking about it right now. Of course, we don't buy it.
Right.
But that's the left's purview. They're really good at talking about the optics of how a thing looks and how it sounds, and misreading those things on purpose. I mean, it's intellectually dishonest, and they know it. It deflects from the real point, because they don't want to talk to you about their violence that they want to enact upon you, which is socialism.
And speaking about deflecting from the real points, listen to the first paragraph of this New York Times article, all right? To be trapped, and this New York Times article is entitled, "Can We Please Relax About Socialism?" And trying to distract what Sherry just said, listen to this first paragraph. To be trapped in the boarding area of a smallish airport in the upper Midwest is often as not to be subject to the bestial din of fricatives, gutturals, and shrieks of hysterical alarm that constitutes political discussion on Fox News, pouring incessantly from those obnoxious ceiling televisions. And unless one fancies running through the TSA gauntlets of gropers, there's no escape. The experience is especially nasty if one concedes or coincides with the primetime show hosted by those two almost indistinguishable fellows with the faces. I'm not even going to continue. You see the point that Sherry's making right now? We're supposed to be talking about socialism, and what I get is some odd anecdotal story about how it's better to go through and be groped by TSA than it is to be subjected to Fox News.
It's because nobody, and this is just about everybody in the political sphere, none of them want to get you on the ideas.
Yes.
They want to get you on shaming you into feeling this way, on bribing you into feeling a certain way, but they don't really want to talk about the core issues. And so that's what you get. You get people who are going to go, yeah, you just wanted to sleep with her. That's why you don't like socialism. Like, it's such a dumb response. But it's good enough for them, because then they can just dismiss you.
See, all right, you just said it right there. This is why I love having Sherry on here so much. Is it good enough for them, though? And
It is.
Well, I know it is, but I don't even want to say should it be good enough for him. I'm wondering, I know, and I'm sure you know too, I'm sure you know a lot of Democrats in your personal life that are extremely highly intelligent, highly educated individuals, PhDs, the like. Would it be good enough for them? I know people that this nonsense, for my brother, for example, this wouldn't be good enough for my brother.
Right.
He would immediately see the same thing I'm seeing. All right, dude, hang on. First of all, CNN is known as the airport television. CNN is everywhere. That's how they got their mark in the industry, was by being on airport television. Secondly, as a Republican, if I didn't want to be subjected to CNN, do you not carry some headphones with you?
Right.
Do you not have a book? What are you talking about? You'd rather go get groped by the TSA members?
It's not good for them when they're thinking through why they want socialism. But often it's good enough for them when they're arguing with you about why to have it. They'll just go, because they're losing the argument. Well, you just don't like her because, you liked a woman like that in high school.
All right, well, that I follow,
that's where people, they just go, I mean, I get called a libtard all the time. I get called a conservative. I can't say the words that they call me in the, on that side. But I get called these things because I talk about core issues. And that's enough for people to dismiss you. You just hate our country. You hate children. And that's not true. Neither of those are true, but it's just enough for them to go, I'm ending this conversation because I'm too worked up.
And that's what it is. That's what it is. Because they're certainly not winning the conversations. And I've said before, I think we need to force people to go back through courses in logical discourse, or at least understand what a logical fallacy is. But I still don't think that would help. As the more I've thought about that, I said that about a month or two back. I think the more I've thought about that, the more I've realized they don't really. No one, and by they I mean some on the right, some on the left for sure. Whoever these individuals are don't necessarily care about winning the argument. Right. They just care about shutting down your pattern of speech.
Absolutely, that's a Saul Alinsky 101. Shut down the opposition by getting outside of their area of expertise, which people do all the time. They setting up straw men, like.
And I'm telling you, after this Bill Maher clip I played yesterday where he said in essentially so many words that it wouldn't have mattered if Jesus Christ himself was assigned to what we now know as the Mueller report, he still wouldn't have believed Jesus Christ himself if he didn't impeach Trump. And I'm thinking, what a very strange, nihilistic way to approach your politics. Right. It's not just disheartening, it's depressing. That is the reality I don't want to live in.
It goes to show you where their true loyalties lie.
Just with the power grab. Just with the power grab. That's what I'm saying. It's a political nihilism where nothing matters except power. Truth itself doesn't matter.
And that goes for the left and the right.
Well, 7:50. Be right back. You approach your politics. It's not just disheartening. It's depressing.
It's going to be a spicy day. I can just feel it.
I inadvertently fell on a pretty decent audio mix in this.
That's what I'm saying.
I was talking to a hard left friend. She said she sees people are afraid of Cortez, but maybe for different reasons. Afraid of Cortez.
I'm afraid of any socialist that gets traction, of course. That because we have a system where just because you get a bunch of people who agree with you, they can force that on you. Like, people hate it when it's happening with someone like Cortez, but they love it when it happens with someone like Trump.
I got no problem at all admitting that either. That if someone were to press me, or if someone were to even just ask me, why are you so afraid of? So you're just saying you're afraid of Alexandria Cortez? Yeah. I'm afraid of Alexandria Cortez because
violent ideologies.
Because it's what Sherry just said. Because she's pitching something that is very akin to what I know as classic. There's such a thing as classic socialism, but the socialism that I've heard pitched in other countries, and we have a system by which it could actually be implemented. So I'm kind of afraid of Alexandria Cortez.
Yes, and that's why you should be afraid of our democracy.
The problem with Daniel's like a who's the Bueller?
Oh,
what's that guy's been his sarcasm is so goddamn dry. It's really difficult sometimes.
Daniel is a button pusher extraordinaire.
I can't even figure out who he's talking about. Is he talking about you? Can't believe you're giving this link.
Yeah, he's talking about me.
But he's playing a conservative character in my Facebook page.
But I mean, it's funny, but it's not a joke.
Yeah.
Like last night, I was on my other show, Postcards from Somalia. And we're talking about this whatever it's called, transsectional feminist cafe that had an 18%. But you saw that article in Australia shutting down. This dude's with me. He's with me. We're talking about that whatever.
Buttigieg, yeah.
That guy. We're talking about what he wants to do. Guys with me. We talk about the military, and all of a sudden, we hate our country. We're traitors. You're libtards, and why don't you come say that to my face?
You're saying this to you, or just
Yes,
like proverbially?
yes, calling us shit, this, and like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but that's the reaction you get because nobody wants to face the realities of what they've supported.
Do you
You're
think
talking to a 61-year-old Marine combat veteran, dudes? I don't care. I'm not going to kiss your butt for that.
for Republicans though, or for people that tell you that, most of the time, I'd say nearly 100% of the time, they immediately personalize it because I've served, or my buddy served, or my father served. Do you think there's any way that you can, not you, I'm saying that philosophically, that can be separated with, all right, not the troops, but the mentality behind those that are calling the shots?
If you didn't have the troops to carry out the violent acts, they would not be carried out. Because politicians are too big of cowards to go do it, and they prey on your children because they know they're vulnerable.
Right, Ray, you're talking about Recode.
I'm not mad at you, Grant. I'm mad at the system.
She's mad at me.
Cheeto. You know what I mean? It's a scary thing. If you just nibbled upon him.
You just lick the cheese off first and
Do
you save it.
Do you think the Kool-Aid Man, by the way, whenever he would quench the thirst of those children, would it drain his life force a little bit each time?
Oh yeah.
That's right. Are you dying, Kool-Aid Man? Oh yeah.
He was so destructive.
Yeah, right.
That would be the last time I bought Kool-Aid for my kids.
That would be the movie script. Is Kool-Aid Man is out there destroying the United States, and we have to send out children to drink him to death. Right? Hey, let's go to Ray on the Crown Closet call number. Last 3 minutes, Ray. I'm not even going to read this subheading here, buddy. What's on your mind?
Well, good morning, Mr. Henry, Miss Voluntary.
Good morning.
I mean, hey, you start out the show, Miss Voluntary, with a probably an offer that most people can't resist. I mean, if you've got the Recode gang out there gang raping everybody, I mean, you're going to have people start throwing in addresses. Hey, come over here. I mean, Knoxville is a unique city, and when you say something like that, you better be prepared for the response because you're going to have a lot of people taking you up on that offer. I would have done it probably like Recode Knoxville gang is the bartender that drugs your drink. And when oh, yeah, absolutely. We're going to have a whole city of people just laid out on
it's
the
couch. It's the AOC that
right.
that drugs your drink.
Yeah, absolutely. And this politics within Knoxville is affecting everybody, and nobody knows about it. And when they come in there and they tell you that somebody could build their addition to their house 8 feet away from your property line where you've got cars parked or whatever you do, that seems to wake people up. But when we're under this drug of Recode Knoxville, it's the best that Knoxville's got to give. It's just, I can't explain how drugged people are when they look at this and they don't know anything about it.
Look at the way they're pitching it, right? Like, they're telling you Knoxville's going to be more prosperous. They're trying to bribe you with it. They're asking you to give away your power because it's easier than taking it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then when it gets into the county, Miss Voluntary, the people in the county are just dumbfounded by it. They don't care about it. But there's a few issues, but the one big thing that county taxes go to, including the city, is the education department. Mm-hmm. And when Recode Knoxville doesn't allow the buses down the street and those parents have to walk their children 4 blocks down the road to catch the bus, and they're 8, 10, 12 years old, this is going to change everything about the county, and it's going to require probably more buses instead of less because you can't fit those big things down those streets when they put in all those bike lanes and sidewalks and trees in the road.
Hey,
And
Ray,
then
we got to hit this break, buddy. I appreciate you staying under the FCC radar for me, by the way.
Ray's good at that.
That's it. Check your drinks, y'all.
Goodness gracious. All right, Ray, we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Bye.
Yeah, that's Ray, 7:58, news, traffic, weather, all that. Hit this break, be right back.
Find the ideological dishonesty of Republicans. They can see how bad something like this is because it enacts violence on people and it does something to their property. But when you bring it up, it's just a microcosm of the bigger picture. That's where they can't then, well, this is the system, this is what we gotta do. Blah, blah, blah. You don't gotta do anything. You let them. You are giving it to them.
Yeah.
Like that's why they can do the things they do is because you go, well, I've got to vote. I've got to. It's my say. Is it?
Well,
Or people get mad at me. You don't vote. Blah, blah, blah. Is it my vote or not?
I think it's good,
Is
yeah.
it mine to do with what I wish or not? They get
This
mad.
is
You
Dick
talk
Mayer.
shit.
He's the lawyer talking about bankruptcy. We have Brian back in. I guess they would have talked about debt collecting
Sherry,
and bankruptcy.
Hey, nice to meet you,
Brian?
Sherry.
all right.
Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet
Can we
you.
set him up at Red and Gray?
Yep.
In the day?
Yes.
Hey, hey, hey.
So one here, one here.
We can move that light back for him, too.
You get a suntan on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on.
Cool.
Sherry Voluntary. I don't know if you've met her. This is Brian.
Hey, I'm Grant Henry.
Hey, Grant.
Nice to meet you. All right, let's do this. I'm going to go take a break real quick. Come back, we'll sort of chat through what we're going to do, whatever.
Okay.
Let me get this out of the way.
This is our co-host, Dick, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry. Dick
Hi,
Mayer.
nice to meet
Yeah.
you.
And John's here. Hey, it's, that'd be good because we're both on the opposite sides. He's a debt collector.
Duties. That's Fox's Sean Lange with the special counsel done in the Mueller report and the deputy attorney general who oversaw the investigations on his way out. Rod Rosenstein, long rumored to be leaving, finally will May 11th. Next stop, Iowa for Joe Biden. 4 rallies in 2 days after the former VP turned Democratic presidential frontrunner kicked off his campaign in Pennsylvania.
If I'm going to be able to beat Donald Trump in 2020, it's going to happen here.
Fox's Rachel Sutherland is live in Pittsburgh.
Dave, Biden told a rally here he's the candidate to beat the president in 2020, but are Pennsylvanians on board? I spoke to a lifelong Democrat who switched in 2016. He said he's sticking with President Trump, saying, I don't think Trump has done a bad job. He gets negative stuff. Everyone just puts him down. But others here think Biden has a good chance at the White House. The former vice president appealed to unionized workers at the Teamster Temple, saying corporations are squeezing workers for their own gain. He also called for a $15 minimum wage. Dave.
Rachel, a terror plot thwarted in California. Mark Domingo arrested, accused of wanting to bomb a white nationalist rally.
Mr. Domingo is a former United States Army soldier who served in Afghanistan and is also a recent convert to Islam.
U.S. Attorney Nick Hanna, a call for a military uprising from Venezuela's opposition leader. Juan Guaido stood with soldiers at a Caracas air base, and a freed activist called for peaceful protests. A socialist leader called it a U.S. coup attempt, urging Venezuelans to rally to support the disputed President Maduro. This is Fox News.
All right, welcome to F-150 Radio. Call from Georgia. Chad, what's shaking in Macon?
I know the F-150 kicks butt and takes names.
Like how the high-strength military-grade aluminum alloy F-150 thrashes the competition with best-in-class towing and torque?
Mm-hmm, not surprised. Totally saw that coming.
Chad, how do you know so much about F-150 beating the competition?
I drive the competition. Got a 10-year lease.
Kind of embarrassing, huh?
Maybe I shouldn't advertise that fact on a national talk radio show.
Good call. The Ford F-150. It doesn't just raise the bar, it is the bar.
Best-in-class claims with properly configured vehicles. Class is full-size pickups under 8,500 pounds. GVWR based on Ford segmentation.
Now get a 2019 F-150 with 0% financing for 72 months. Only at your Ford dealer. Not all buyers will qualify for Ford credit financing. 0% APR financing for 72 months at $13.89 per month per thousand finance, regardless of down payment. Program number 21038 on 2019 Ford F-150. Not available on Raptor. Residency restrictions apply. Take till delivery. Authorized Ford dealer stock by 4/30/19. See dealer for qualifications and complete details.
Good morning. morning. I'm Tanya Stout-Brown with a local news update on Talk Radio 92.3 and AM 760. 2 sixth graders in Cumberland County are accused of conspiracy to commit murder after they allegedly hatched a plan for a school shooting. Investigators say a resource officer at South Cumberland Elementary School heard rumors of a hit list. The search for it led to the young suspects who had created a map of the school, and they say made plans to enter from the back on the last day of classes and kill faculty, staff, and students. Then they were going to kill themselves. 28-year-old Keotrick Tucker faces charges after police say he wrapped his arms around his infant child and squeezed until the baby went unconscious. They say he also tied the baby's mother's hair to the lid of a smoker, saying he wanted to see her burn. 2 more cases of measles have been confirmed in East Tennessee, so says the state health department. That brings the total number of cases here to 3, and the 2 new cases are said to be directly related to the first case. No information is being released regarding who the patients are, where they're from, or how they're doing now. The Anderson County Sheriff's Department says a woman on Haney Hollow Road was robbed at gunpoint in the driveway of her own home. She says a white man with glasses and short brown hair got out of the passenger side of a brown car and struck up a conversation. Then he pulled a handgun and demanded money. The woman gave him $330 she had in her purse to pay bills. He got back in the car and the driver backed out the driveway so she couldn't see the license plate. And now you're up to date. I'm Tanya Stout-Brown on Talk Radio 92.3 and AM 760. Knoxville's talk you can trust.
When you drive onto the lot at Fox Toyota, there's a welcome sign without there being a welcome sign. You just know you're welcome. Test drive one of the new vehicles today on the lot at Fox Toyota and be treated like family. Family owned and operated for decades. Fox Toyota, exit 122 off I-75 North, or call them toll free 844-818-0255. Check out their website at foxtoyotaclinton.com. That's foxtoyotaclinton.com.
Weather from the FMT Insurance Studios of Talk Radio 92.3 and AM 760.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the last day of April. Hard to believe it's here. We're expecting sunshine, highs 80 to 85. Some could be a little bit warmer than that. Lows tonight near 60. We're partly cloudy, slight chance for a thunder shower, low 80s tomorrow. Better chance for scattered showers and thunder showers Thursday into part of Friday, near normal temperatures by the weekend. Hey, great gifts and pampering spa treatments for Mom at Spa 9700. All hobo bags and accessories 20% off May 10th through 11th only at Spa 9700. From the 6th Storm Team, I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Hinkin for the East Tennessee Weather Network.
It's 59 at Talk Radio 92.3 and AM 760.
Mr. Electric of Knoxville can help you safely maintain the electrical systems in your home or business. Ask about the free home safety check. Go online now to MrElectric.com.
Traffic from the FMT Insurance Studios of Talk Radio 92.3 and AM 760.
Left line run over downtown, very busy. West through downtown and inbound on 75, west out of downtown. I've got a report of a wreck with injury. Somebody may be trapped in a vehicle.
All right, Brian. Let him know my dump button's ready. My dump button's ready.
For minutes, 640 westbound by Westwood Avenue. Did you know that R&M Climate Control, R&M Air Conditioning, can put you with a worry-free cooling system for $99 a month? That's only from R&M Climate Control.
Spin it again.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better.
Grant, can we take Roberta's call before we get into this?
Who is actually in the arena.
You know what, I've heard people call, and I kind of like it, the era that we're in, the post-truth kind of era.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was watching CNN fake news. What do you think?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Let us return to the fight. This battle is far from over.
We're just going to come in with
I
this
told
stuff.
her to call back. I told her to call back.
All right, good. 8:07 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Henry. We have a house full of folks. I'm going to save. Let me do this real quick. If you're looking for a great job, by the way, Eastwood Landscaping, they're looking for motivated crew members willing to pay $11 to $15 per hour. They're voted best in landscaping. You can apply in person at 5547 Washington Pike, Monday through Thursday. That's 5547 Washington Pike, Monday through Thursday. Or just go online to eastwoodlandscaping.com. They do the landscaping for the palatial estate that is the FMT Insurance Studios. Sherry Voluntary sitting to my right.
Hola.
Yeah, tell them one more time where they can find your stuff.
You can go to Facebook and find the Sherry Voluntary Show, postcards from Somalia, if you're into that sort of, humor. And you might not like it, but you can find me on SoundCloud, TuneIn. You can have that TuneIn app on Amazon that says, hey, play the Sherry Voluntary Show, and it'll play.
You're also on Google Play Music and I think iTunes as well.
And
right?
Liberty Radio Network.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. We have our great guest. His name, his given Christian name is Student Loan Debt Expert. That's funny over there. And directly from me, go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience. Sir.
Hey, I'm Richard Mayer with the law firm of Mayer Newton. I'm a bankruptcy lawyer, and just in the opposite of me, I've got Brian Ibsen here. He's a collector, so I think we're going to have some fun talking about going back and forth today.
Awesome. All right,
with collections and versus a bankruptcy.
Let me start with a very general, asinine question here. All right, in the day and age of Donald Trump, and the headlines you hear, at least during his campaign, every third story was bankruptcy this and bankruptcy that. For those that are just tuning in, maybe they don't follow politics maybe that much. Maybe they don't follow bankruptcy that much at all. What even is bankruptcy?
Well, bankruptcy for a consumer, this is a fresh start. You can get rid of your unsecured debts, all your credit cards, medical bills, loans. You cannot get rid of student loans, but we're talking about a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is otherwise known as complete bankruptcy. Most of the time, you get to keep your house and your car. You can even get your credit score up pretty quickly right now. Although it's on your credit for 10 years, we find people getting a 720 credit score within 14 months. Bankruptcy will stop the debt collectors, such as Brian, from collecting. That's the bottom line. It does not get rid of student loans, so Brian will be able to collect a little bit more after your case is over with.
And by the way, for the Real News audience, you two are friends with each other, right? I mean, yeah, I was going to say.
They sound like friends.
If people watch The Office, there's an episode where Michael, the guy that leads The Office, he gets into some trouble with credit card debt, and someone tells him that he should just declare bankruptcy. So what he does is he stands on a desk and screams, "I declare bankruptcy!" So he's therefore declared bankruptcy, so he's good to go. One might presume that the process itself is possibly far more difficult than just declaring out loud bankruptcy, right?
Well, it's declaring it through a computer which you sign under penalty of perjury. In order to file, you are under oath. You have to do a credit counseling briefing before you file, which generally most of our clients do it on the internet. You fill out what's called your petition and schedules. Under oath, you say, I'm going to file a Chapter 7. You list everybody you owe, everything you own. Now, Tennessee allows certain exemptions. Like if you have a couple kids, you can exempt $50,000 of equity in your house. You also put down your intentions. If you want to keep your home, keep your cars. You also have to do a budget, and you also have to make less than a certain amount of money to qualify for a Chapter 7. We file the case, we upload it to United States Bankruptcy Court. After that, you go to an easy creditors meeting. The only person generally there is a trustee who'll ask you about 3 or 4 minutes worth of questions, see if you have any assets that can go to creditors. Right after that, you do a debt management class that Congress required. It's about another hour on the internet. Then you're discharged 3 months later. Once you file, there's an automatic stay in place, and people cannot collect debts. Now, beforehand, we can talk about if they hire me, I can maybe stop Brian from calling them.
Right, yeah.
Because Brian mostly is subject to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and there's rules he has to follow.
Let me ask, before we get into that too much, trying to localize this a little bit, we had a a listener to this program ended up messaging me a situation in that was dealing with Tenovo. They went in for what was supposed to be a routine MRI, and they were quoted up front, if you pay today, the 20% off type thing, you pay $950 today for a good faith estimate. That would include the entirety of all of the services rendered. Well, they eventually end up getting a statement back a week later, $11,500. So it was about 11 times what they were originally quoted. Is there anything within bankruptcy courts that deals with sense of, say, unconscionability or some type of fraudulent inducement or anything?
Well, if the client came in to do a Chapter 7, whether it's 900 or 11,000 or 11 million, the debt would be wiped out.
Gotcha.
So it really doesn't matter how much. Now, if that was the customer's only debt, they can call up Tenovo and say, listen, you don't make it 900 like you promised, I might file a bankruptcy and you'll get nothing. So why don't you get reasonable?
Can you file a bankruptcy for a specific charge only? Do you understand what I'm saying? Or does it have to be...
There's no limit. Now, we advise clients that if you have one creditor or a small amount, don't file.
Gotcha.
But you can file it as long as you're insolvent, you owe more than what you have, you can file bankruptcy.
All right, so you just said a second ago, working with individuals like yourself, firms like yourself, you may be able to shut down our buddy over here, student loan. Now, maybe not the student loan debt, because that, as I understand from our previous conversation, is guaranteed. But what does that look like in practice of shutting down those debt collectors?
Well, what happens is a client will come into our office and say, I have been getting worn out by the phone calls. These creditors are threatening to garnish my wages, take me to court. Sometimes an illegal creditor will say, we're going to put you in jail, things like that. Once they come in and retain us, we tell the clients, when they call you, give them our name, Mayor Newton, tell them to call us. Brian's a third-party debt collector. If they're represented by an attorney, they have to call us. They cannot proceed to collect any more on the phone. Now, once they file the bankruptcy, they can't collect. There's what's called an automatic stay. If the creditor tries to collect, take them to court, they're going to have to go tell a bankruptcy court why they violated the automatic stay, and client can get punitive damages, attorney fees, significant amount of money.
What does that look like for you and Urine? You've ever dealt with that? Of calling somebody up and saying, hey, go contact my attorney instead?
Well, typically when somebody does get an attorney, the attorney will send over a letter. You do actually have to contact the attorney moving forward, unless the attorney says, I no longer represent the client, proceed with the debt collection with them.
And just so you two individuals know, our co-host today, it's called Voluntary Tuesday. She considers herself an anarcho-capitalist. A voluntarinist, I suppose, would be the better phrase. To bring everyone in the conversation here, let me ask you, so as far as individualism and voluntary consent reigning supreme, how would you feel about the aspect of debt collection? If you voluntarily assented to a contract to be held liable to that contract later on, I suppose you'd be okay with these efforts?
Yes.
Yeah.
But debt collection in bankruptcy, I think, is one of the most important functions in the market. Because it pushes resources that aren't being used to be in a place where they provide value. So, it's not something anybody wants to do. It's not something you look forward to, but it's a necessary function of the market to have bankruptcy.
Well, bankruptcy's been around since the Constitution. Part of the people that came over to this country were escaping their creditors. They had debtor's prison in England. They put it in the Constitution. There's a bankruptcy provision. Now, realistically, people get divorced. They have significant medical problems. They're dealing with unscrupulous lenders. They have a car that they bought that's a lemon. They have to let it go back. They have a house that they bought that was poorly constructed. It has black mold. There's a lot of reasons people have to file. And bankruptcy is a right to help people get a fresh start.
I eventually want to get into some of the best war stories, we used to like to call them, with each other, of some of the worst debt collectors you've had to deal with, or some of the worst stories you've had to deal with as a debt collector, possibly. But I'll save that to the next segment. I want to ask, as we're on our way out the next possibly 3 minutes before this first break. All right, so let's say I come to you and I have $11 million worth of debt that I want to declare bankruptcy on. What happens to that debt? One might again presume that the creditor or that's trying to collect that debt would have some sense of reliance upon that debt being paid back. Maybe even make moves towards that of reliance of that money being paid back. Where does that debt go?
That debt's discharged. It's not collected. It's no longer. Please remember, though, when a creditor lends to you, even though they're relying on you paying back, they're charging interest. They're taking a chance that you might file bankruptcy because you get divorced, you're in a failing business, your car blows up, you have some unexpected medical bills. While there's reliance, there's a possibility that something bad can happen, and the customer or the debtor might have to file a bankruptcy.
Well, and I don't want someone to get the misconception here as to what we're talking. So far, what we brought up, it seems like there's really no, I don't know, why wouldn't I declare bankruptcy? There's obviously ramifications to declaring bankruptcy.
The ramifications are, while it's on your credit report for 10 years, it's in my opinion, a good ramification because you're getting a fresh start. We find, now I've represented probably 50 to 60,000 people. These are hardworking East Tennessee residents. We do not see anybody ever coming in to fraudulently get rid of their debt. These are people that have been hit up by horrible circumstances, a divorce, a business that failed, no fault of their own, maybe a grandchild that has some drug dependency issues. They had to use their credit cards for that, unexpected medical bills. Fraud is never a part of that, in my opinion, in this area.
And this is probably too big of a question to ask you as for the last 2 minutes that we have. But all right, so speaking of President Trump, he's filed bankruptcy before, and some
not he personally, just his business.
That's the question I was going to ask. Then some Republican might come back and say, "Well, you don't understand the chapter that it was filed in."
It was under Chapter 11. It was a reorganization. He eventually worked it out with the banks, and he's done well. He overextended himself in Atlantic City casinos. They filed a Chapter 11, reorganized. He worked with the banks, and he just took advantage of what's legally allowed up there. It's a federal law. He didn't do anything fraudulent.
What? Go ahead.
I think a lot of people see bankruptcy as a get-out-of-jail-free card, and it really isn't, because the point of it is it's supposed to show your people that you would ask money for afterwards that maybe this is a risky loan. I'm not going to give them money because they filed once where they didn't pay their creditor. So there's that. It's an indicator to people that you are not someone they might want to give money to.
We find that while on paper that would look like it would make sense, lenders, after they have a customer come in to borrow money, they'll generally think, hey, wait a minute, this is a good loan. They don't owe anything to anybody. Their debt-to-income ratio is excellent. They've had a bankruptcy. They've gotten a fresh start. Then it's strictly underwriting. They'll look, well, wait a minute, everybody's healthy, they're working. They're going to pay their debt back. 14 months after filing a bankruptcy, they might have a 720 credit score.
Yeah, that's possible, but that's the function of bankruptcy, is to let other people. I mean, you get the start fresh, but that also is an indication to the market that this person has not paid their debts at some point. So it's an important function of the market, is my point.
It's interesting. Right. I've heard some friends that work with my brother, first generation or first generation Chinese immigrants or here for the first time themselves, would say that the Americanized concept of debt is basically how Chinese people were pitched the concept of now a social system of debt, of where if you don't have enough likes on Facebook, or if you were caught smoking in public in a bus terminal, or you can't buy bus tickets anymore. It's just been a very odd thing to try and extrapolate. Ross, we hitting this break right now. Hit this break currently. Come back with his security segment talking about immigration issues in America. Come back with our guest in studio after the 30 break, talking about some more stories, some more bankruptcy stuff. I just want to get into some philosophical conversations about the potential morality behind all those decisions. But 8:22 now. Be right back. All right, y'all. This next segment's going to have nothing to do with bankruptcy, but...
We sit in the comfortable chairs.
I wish we had some.
No, back there.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, Diggs, that chair ain't that bad.
It's leather chair back there. It's more like a cigar lounge.
Yeah. It's much nicer. I don't know why they make everything in the studio so high.
I don't know.
I guess, is it I don't know why they do that, but all studios are like high instead of just regular.
We didn't get any calls.
No, not yet. Our
You might.
our audience is somewhat timid about calling sometimes.
You already talked to Ray today.
Yeah, bankruptcy is a heavy
might call
topic
again.
for people.
Oh, I'm not going on there. They might think I'm following something like that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand it. I mean, I don't understand all of the stuff surrounding it. Like, it's pretty involved, so I think a lot of people are intimidated to talk about it. Unless they've gone through it and understand it a little better than.
Well, can you imagine him calling to collect on you and you're crying? Then you come to me.
Yeah, that's true. I have excellent credit, though. My credit score was the best they'd ever seen when I bought my house.
What's my crime cost stuff like on a home, not a home.
Yeah. I don't do debt, though. That's why I've never had a bad problem with credit, because I don't have any debt but my mortgage.
If y'all want to jump in on this next segment, I have no problem saying anything you want to. It's a his security segment. They want stuff that specifically pertains to securing America, immigration, gun rights, things like that.
That's above my pay grade.
Sure, if you want to throw something in, just let me know.
I don't think you want me to.
All right. You gonna leave it all up
I've
to
already
me,
been trying to be kicked from this show.
Like I said, sure, as long as you're talking about Recode Knoxville, nobody cares
Right, exactly.
how antagonistic you're being.
Yeah, Stan listens to the show.
Huh?
Stan listens on the show.
Let's see if I got any
David said that it's so you don't get comfortable. It keeps you sharp. The high chairs.
Oh, yeah?
I wonder if he's being serious.
Matt Robbins' studio, they're not so really sitting in high chairs. Sports.
Oh, well, sports. Who needs to be sharp for that?
That's a tough gig. Y'all think I'm playing sports talk radio is a tough gig, man. Because it's not, you can't just focus on a few sports. If you do sports talk, you have to be up on women's everything, badminton, golf, all the sports.
Wait till there's the Olympics, too.
Oh, my goodness.
My business partners do a sports show.
Yeah?
And they especially one of them, he lives like all the sports, so.
But if you have someone calling in talking about like Olympics, for example, you have someone calling in talking about speed walking or the most obscure. I'm serious.
Is speed walking in the Olympics?
Yeah, you have to be up on your speed walking game.
The Mexicans are the best at it. Seriously.
Are they really?
Yes, I'm being dead serious. It's a national sport. You gotta get up.
Speed walking.
That's how I should start this immigration segment.
Did you know?
Yeah. They're one of the national sports of Mexico, speed walking.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know this. You learn something new
That
every day.
sounds like a setup for some comedic bit, doesn't it? So Mexico just won the gold medal in speed walking. It's your story. Have you heard about this? Have you heard about it?
My sister's actually a para-Olympian.
Is she?
Yes.
In what?
Silver medal. Trick water skiing.
That's awesome.
Really?
Yes. In Australia she competed. So, yeah. She's paraplegic, but she does all these tricks on
That's
the
incredible.
kneeboard. Yeah, it's pretty cool. She's a big athlete, though. She also...
What doesn't move, her legs? Or?
Yeah, she's a paraplegic, so... yes, paraplegic.
Waist down.
Yeah, waist down. It's basically, she's like upper rib cage down.
But she can get on skis and...
She uses a kneeboard.
Okay.
She gets strapped on it.
Okay. That's so incredible. That's unbelievable.
I know.
Core strength.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Actually, she doesn't have
Yeah,
core
it's
strength.
just maybe 3 minutes, I think, at most. It's primarily going to be this clip, so, all right.
And speed walking.
Mexican speed walking team.
You ain't telling me to do a new profession. You're
Yeah.
going to American speed walking.
Yeah, right.
My kids are really tall, so they should do like the speed walking. My son is 6'5", so.
That long stride.
Speed walking, you have to do some form, or certain form where you can't really pick your feet up off the ground.
Oh, yeah, it's heel toe. Yeah, I mean,
But he
it's...
has such a.
Yeah, it's heel toe. Once, I don't know how they judge it, because it's like 150 kilometers.
And Nick Crawford. Join the conversation on the Crown Plaza call-in line. 865-888-TALK.
Securing America. Brought to you by His Security. In God we trust. All others, we monitor.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Real News. This is the Securing America segment. Let's go straight into this right now. There's been a recent headline that we all saw, or maybe we didn't see. I'm looking right now from Summit News. This has been reported on by Paul Joseph Watson and others. Pope Francis sends $500,000 to assist migrants in Mexico trying to reach the U.S. Today, Donald Trump will try and bring up one more time conversation with the Senate and House Democrats. Not sure how this is going to go with Pelosi and Schumer again. You saw how it shut down last time. And here's some of the reporting from Fox News.
Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan has approved a Homeland Security Department request for more personnel at the southern border. Meanwhile, President Trump is about to make another major proposal for what figures to be his main re-election campaign issue, immigration. It involves a new way of deciding who gets in and who does not. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has specifics tonight from the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. In addition to his signature issue of eliminating illegal immigration, President Trump is also proposing major reforms to legal immigration. But so far, those proposals have met with as much opposition as his plans to deal with illegal immigrants.
White House staff are expected to deliver to the president next week a plan for merit-based immigration. President Trump insisting that the current system is irreparably broken.
The problem is you have 10 times more people coming up with their families. It's like Disneyland now.
Since the days of the campaign, the president has promoted merit-based immigration, similar to Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
No, it's very interesting. I want to stop right there. Similar to Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, all right? So every time a leftist, progressive, or Democrat or whoever wants to suggest how we should follow the ideals of a more progressive nation, they tend to cite someone like a Canada or someone like an Australia or someone like a New Zealand or any European country. And frustratingly enough, when you start to compare immigration standards or when you start to compare voting rights or the fact that you have to have, say, something as simple as an ID to vote, these countries that they point to that are allegedly more progressive than America are doing what Donald Trump is talking about doing right now. Australia, for example, 3 years ago, when we first started this program, came out and said that they were moving an entire visa classification. They were moving towards a more merit-based system. Oh, and by the way, you had to be fluent in English to even apply. Could you imagine Donald Trump coming out right now and saying that you had to be fluent in English to get into America? He would be excoriated for it.
He also wants to eliminate the visa lottery and chain migration. Democrats have fiercely opposed the president, but the White House hopes that may be changing.
We have a number of unaccompanied children skyrocketing, the number of those individuals coming across our border, being smuggled and taken advantage of and exploited. And now members of the Democrat Party hopefully are seeing exactly what the president's been talking about and will have a new willingness to help us address it.
Now you see why Sarah Huckabee Sanders is pitching it this way, okay? The way that you get an Alexander Cortez on your side to secure America. Segment brought to you by His Security, by the way, hissecurity.com. Focusing on live video, thermostat, security panel, lights, image capturing, wellness, smart security systems, like technology for the home business. You want smart security systems trying to help us with our immigration problem in America. The reason why Sarah Huckabee Sanders has just pitched it through a humanitarian effort. Coyotes bringing people over against their will sometimes, bringing people over through sex trafficking. This is because Alexander Cortez now apparently is okay with having military intervention in Venezuela because it's a humanitarian concern. It's very, very odd now that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are falling on the same page of non-interventionism, but you can still convince a progressive to be okay with warfare as long as you can convince them that there's a humanitarian concern. It's strange. It seems like Democrats are constantly trying to find and grapple back that moral high ground on any time they can get that going. And sorry, Roz, get yell mic going here. Sorry.
Is it there? Okay. Everyone wants to use violence when it's something they want.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. That's where our system goes, is that I want this and I think it's right, so I get to use violence against you to get it to come to pass.
About another 30 seconds of this Fox clip here. Finish His Security segment out. Again, keep in mind what I'm going to bring up tomorrow, possibly this headline, Summit News, Pope Francis sends $500,000 to assist migrants in Mexico trying to reach U.S. This ties a little bit back into what caller Matt said yesterday.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senator Chuck Schumer, and other Democrats will be at the White House tomorrow for the first time since January 9th, when President Trump walked out of their meeting on wall funding. Infrastructure is the main topic, but immigration no doubt will come up. Customs and Border Protection is preparing for a massive influx of people now that word has gone out that detention centers are full and people are being released into the...
All right, now listen to this right here. This is where we'll end his security segment, the securing America's borders here. Listen to what this person says right now.
United States.
If you come now, and if you come as a family or as an unaccompanied child, you will be allowed to stay. You will be released because our court system is so backlogged and our laws prevent effective repatriation, even if there's no right to stay in the U.S.
That is the acting Homeland Security Secretary. The acting Homeland Security Secretary has just said, we don't have secure borders necessarily. Come on in. Come on in. We're so filled up right now, we basically are forced to let you go. I don't know if that's because of our current asylum laws or whatever it's because of, but our acting Homeland Security Secretary has said, we can't house you anymore. That means we're necessarily going to have to let you go.
Yeah, I mean, I used to live out west in Colorado, and so I knew some immigration agents, and they would get so frustrated with the whole thing because they would go pick the people up, they would put them in detention, and then they would be released a couple months later, right back. So this isn't a new thing. Like, I know that's being kind of posed that way, but the immigration issue is a tool, like all the other issues, to gain political power in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And so it's a terrible, like, there's so many problems with the system. Like, it's just it's a mess.
And while we're sitting around here messing around with people's lives, human beings' lives, no one's really genuinely concerned about changing any of it. You're exactly right. It's a tool that people are using. When
it's
you have
a fear mechanism to make people afraid, and then you can control them easier.
When you have Senator Ted Cruz that comes out and says, I don't know, maybe the wall's not the biggest concern. If we're going to prioritize this, let's get many more federal judges in there so we can increase this asylum system as we need to. Let's get some actual border agents, some ICE. Let's increase the ICE agents from 5,000 to 20,000 so when we do have a problem, we can actually properly use the federal systems to take care of that problem. When we have reasonable solutions, no one's willing to consider the reasonable solutions because it will take away the political tool. Is it a political tool? 8:34, that has been his security segment, Securing America, hissecurity.com, hissecurity.com. Check that out. Be right back.
Huh? Yeah, 4 club members watching the stream.
All right. Shine, I'll talk about it later, Shine. That is about as much allowance as I have to do with that segment. When we come back, yeah, can I get into some of the horror stories, if you will?
Yeah, why don't, or how about, can we have like Brian pretending he's a debt collector, we can start talking about Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and bankruptcy.
Yeah, what do you want to? You actually want to play out like a
yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. I mean, we can work through that.
Yeah. Do you want to do like a mock phone call almost? Like,
yeah. The problem is mock phone call doesn't always collect on the debt.
Well, let's just say a medical bill, $20,000 medical bill.
I would love that. I think it'd make for great radio. All right. If you're cool with that, bro, let's do it. But yeah, I'll do the ring, ring, ring. Give me your money. Yeah, that'd be great.
And then I can segue into bankruptcy or
we
keep segueing.
Yeah, fair debt collections would be fantastic. We'll bring that up. Actually, I'd say let's do it this way. Let's do the little mock thing or whatever. That'll bring us into conversations of some of the worst stories you've heard of your clients, what they've experienced. Maybe some of the worst stories you've heard of some of the people you've worked with.
Trying to collect.
Yeah, or trying to collect. I don't know. I mean,
imagine there's a few there.
Imagine there is too, man. I don't know how it works. Let's not name companies here, but I feel sorry for people when you're talking about
the problem is it wouldn't be horror loans or horror stories when I was on student loans. It'd be for mobile homes.
That's what I was going to bring up. I was just going to bring that up when you're talking about someone's mobile home. It's pretty sad.
Or debt buyers who are collecting for credit cards.
Well, debt buyers, you don't have to really pay them. Depends on how many times they're sold.
Right.
Because you got companies that buy foreclose. Oh, we own your debt now.
Debt is big business. Big business.
You really want to do a phone call, mock?
Yeah, just for the heck of it.
I can play the debt collector if you want to. I just don't know what they say.
Well, you can play, and I'll tell you whether you're doing it right or not. But
all right. Yeah, I'll play the debt collector. That'll probably work better. And whenever I get something wrong, just be like, no. He would have said this.
The best thing to do on mobile homes, like, well, the best Christmas present you can give your kids is a roof over their heads.
Is that what y'all say?
They'll say anything.
The problem is, depends on what you're collecting. You got a good cop, bad cop. Student loans, it's not there is no bad cop because you're federal.
You hear that, Sherry? There's no bad cops when it comes to the federal government.
Well, the problem is you're no, I mean on that.
No, I'm just
dead.
I know, I'm just messing with Sherry.
Because we know, because on that, you know they're gonna get the money.
That looks a little better.
You're not gonna need me, right? I'm just gonna wear the mask.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, you can be the consumer.
As opposed to a Trotsky.
So if you're gonna be the debt collector, who's gonna be the consumer? You gonna need to be a consumer?
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
You can be
the one you're trying to collect on.
Yeah.
I'll jump in.
All right.
What are you calling to collect on?
I have no idea. Let's do
$20,000 credit card, and you're representing a collection agency. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Hanson, this is the gentleman that was just at your door, who you refused to open the door and talk with.
This phone call was made by a debt collector to a laid-off executive who had fallen behind on his car payment.
If you refuse to answer the door to me, I guarantee you, I will wake up every neighbor in your entire building.
Is this for real?
Oh, yeah. How to pay your bills.
The foul language, the threatening tactics, and the timing of the call in the middle of the night are all entirely illegal under federal law, but quite common, according to at least one former.
Dude, why don't I do it this way then? I'll come on and just be like the most outrageous debt collector ever. Say I'm going to talk to your family members, I'm going to come bust your door down, and then people think it's crazy, I'll play that quick clip.
Yeah, look, you gave them extended credit, so might as well call them as well. Like it's your problem, you can't increase my limits.
Is there any place someone can go? Let's say they don't have the money necessary to hire an attorney. Websites, stuff they can.
In my opinion, they're all scams.
Really?
No, the majority of the companies out there are scams because there's companies out there for student loans. They're like, oh, we'll help you with a student loan, and they pay them $600. Where you call on a student loan, you call the provider that's required to work for you. With you. So
all they're doing
there's companies making a quick $600.
The debt settlement companies, you can do better on your own because the problem is they'll take your money
and not pay them.
Well, or you'll owe 10 creditors. Well, 9 will work with you. The 10th will sue you, and you've wasted your money. You could have gone to a bankruptcy lawyer and done a reorganization.
Be like, I paid $77 business. Hell, no, you didn't. They walked away. No, there's a lot of companies out there that say debt forgiveness. You see them all the time. You're like, we've never heard of them. They haven't contacted us.
All right, you play the person I'm trying to collect from.
Or you can have her play it, and then
Sherry, you'll be my person. I'm gonna call you on this phone and say that I'm trying.
Can I buy a trailer?
No, you got $20,000 in credit card debt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Shoes.
Yeah,
that's right. I can give you some high heels.
Sure. And you try and say no, I don't want to pay this bill, and I'll say I just came to your door and you wouldn't talk to me. I'm gonna get real confrontational with you, and then we're gonna say, all right, how would that have gone, really?
But I don't get to hang up.
Well, normally if you hang up, they'll call right back.
Right.
Immediately.
That's gonna be my noise for me calling you, right? You said they'll call right back?
Well, it depends on what they're collecting. If they, like on a student loan, if somebody hangs up and on a student loan, you have to give a mini Miranda. Be like,
this is debt collection service. Yeah,
no, be like, this call's monitor recorded. I'm calling on behalf of the Department of Education. As soon as you do that, and if she IDs an address and hangs up, I can't call her for 7 days. But on a first party debt, that's totally different. Because if you're calling, say you're Capital One calling her, and she hangs up, you own the debt, you call back.
I got you.
But it really depends on the debt you're calling, whether they hang up. Normally, federal, if you hang up, if she gives the address and you say this call's monitor record for quality, you can't call that person back for 7 days.
Hey, welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Roz, I need this computer going here. Y'all didn't realize this, but Miss Sherry Voluntary made a contract with me a while back. I started a credit card service. She owes me about $20,000. I need to call her right now to collect on that. Hang on. Here we go. Hey, Sherry, you there?
Hello?
Yeah, you owe me $20,000. I need that right now.
I needed those shoes, though.
No. Forget about your shoes. I was just at your door, by the way, and trying to talk to you about this. If you don't answer, next time I knock on this door, I'm going to literally go around to your neighbors and bust down their doors to get this debt from you. How do you feel about that?
I don't like it.
I don't like it. All right, y'all think I'm joking about that? You think I'm messing around? Listen to this clip from ABC News.
2:57 a.m. Yes, Mr. Hanson, this is the gentleman that was just at your door who you refused to open the door or talk with.
This phone call was made by a debt collector to a laid-off executive who had fallen behind on his car payments.
And if you refuse to answer the door to me, I guarantee you I will wake up every neighbor in your entire building. Ooh. Okay, and I'll let everybody know you don't know how to pay your bills.
The foul...
Look, I'm laughing a little bit here because it's Roz is laughing too. Student loan debt expert. It sounds like an SNL skit. Is this out of the realm of what normally happens?
This happens all the time, and that's why people come into our office because of that harassing behavior, which is highly illegal.
I got a call once from my neighbor. Then she was saying, "Do you know if this person? Have they paid their?" And I knew the person, and I was like,
"Wait! They didn't call. It wasn't your debt. They were calling for somebody else."
They called for one of my neighbors and said this person owes us money, and I was like, "If you ever call me again, I will sue you. Do not darken my door. This is not my business."
Is that legal?
No, we have the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. It's a very important right for everybody. If a third party is collecting a debt and they're using abusive tactics, calling during the middle of the night, calling your neighbors.
Your work, right? They can't call you.
Absolutely. And especially if you tell them, I'm represented, don't call me, I'm not paying you anything. If they keep calling and you take notes, you can hire a lawyer at no cost who will sue them under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And I can assure you, you're entitled to $1,000 pretty much immediately, plus your attorney fees. It will not cost you a dime. It's a very powerful law. It'll stop third-party debt collector harassment.
How does someone find one of those attorneys?
You just have to ask around. The best thing to do is call Mayor Newton, and we can refer you to any number of attorneys in this area that does Fair Debt Collection Practices Act work. It's a very technical area, but if you ask attorneys, they'll generally can be able to tell you an attorney that specializes in that.
Can I chime in here?
Yeah.
Chime in anytime, Brian.
Now, he is correct on Fair Debt Act that you do have to follow. Now, there is a difference whether you're a first-party collector or a third-party collector. Majority companies out there collecting debt, the company will hire a company to collect for them. But if the company collects on their own, they have their own employees, they do have things that they can do otherwise besides third-party. Technically, if you're a third-party debt, you can't really harass them and say this. For example, you can call neighbors and friends and try to get a message. You shouldn't be releasing their debt. Oh, I'm calling Dick. Dick owes me $100. How can I get in touch with them? For example, if I was trying to find Dick, be like, do you still live next to Dick Mayer? He's like, yes, I do. I was like, do you mind giving him a message? And that's all I do is I'd be like, will you please give a message, phone number, and then I'd take that person off. I wouldn't call them again.
Let me ask this, Brian. If you're a first-party debt collector, like say a hospital or just the credit card company itself, and you call me and you say, Mr. Mayor, I'm collecting on a $20,000 credit card debt. You need to pay it right now. And I say, I will not pay. Never call me again. At that point, are you going to continue farther on that conversation to try to collect?
Well, technically, if they request a do not call, that's a verbal do not call. Then you'd probably, if it's a first party and if you have the rights to go after, you'd go the legal part by written letters and legal documents that way. But you wouldn't call the person.
So that will stop the calls, because I tell clients, say, if you can't afford it and you don't need to file bankruptcy, tell the debt collector, the first party debt collector, I will not pay, never call again. And if they say anything that's unpleasant other than thank you very much, have a good day, then they say, hey, may I record this call because I have evidence for a harassment lawsuit.
Well, typically any debt collector, their phone calls are recorded and monitored, but as a consumer, you do have the right to record the call.
And I mean, we're only a one-party state, right? You don't have to get permission from the other, is that?
That's correct, but I tell all my clients, if they're going to record, always, always, always tell the other side, I'm going to record. You don't have to have permission. You just tell them,
yeah.
I'm going to record. Now, which debt collector will want to talk into a recorder when they're doing, taking abusive tactics?
Right. What are some of the, on the way out here, we got to hit this break here in a minute, and I want to come back with some of the war stories, but you guys are throwing around third party, first party quite a bit. I don't think that needs to be clarified for some of the audience members, but for those that don't understand what you mean, third party, first party collection, what are you talking about?
First party is that I give you $20,000. My company itself is collecting it. Third party is I'm hiring B company over here. I'm not dealing with the debt. They're going to collect it for me and get it back somehow.
Right, and they take a fee off top for doing that service.
Well, they're gonna charge a fee for collecting for them.
Right, I got you. Got to hit this break right now. 8:48 in the morning. Stick around when I come back. I want to go through some of the some of the war stories, some of the worst, and possibly maybe even some of the best if we can find any such thing about some of these debt collections, and then give one last opportunity to pitch some information about bankruptcy in general. 8:49. Be right back.
That was fun. Roz is playing great music. Better have my money.
Appropriate music.
I would love for Cardi B or someone to call up and try and collect that for me. That'd be great. Yeah, you better have my money. All right, sure, yeah. Where are you?
I know what you want to collect. Someone just messaged me and asked me if I'm a flatty.
A flatty? What's a flatty?
Someone who believes in the flat earth grant.
Oh. Is that what they call themselves, flatties?
Yes, I never heard that. So do you mean a person who believes in the flat earth?
They probably shouldn't give any more memeable things to call them.
They're big flatties.
Somebody wants you to talk about the terror suspect being arrested yesterday.
That was he's the guy that started the show with me. He was just trying to give me things that would fit within that American segment.
Is that Sean?
Yeah.
I didn't know it's it didn't occur to me that that's fine.
That's why the S is in there. Unless it's his,
He looks so respectable in his picture there.
You trying to say he's not respectable in real life? Oh, I think my brother's in there now.
Really? What's your brother?
His name's Trace.
Well, that's like a romance novel name or
his real name
soap
is
opera name.
Frederick Earl Henry III. We just call him Trace.
That's funny. I used to date a guy in high school named Richard Jennings Holland III, and they called him Trey.
Oh yeah? Well, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, and then they had a second son, and it just wasn't enough.
Grant.
Wasn't enough left
Trace
in the lineage
Grant.
there.
You guys sound like you're in like some lonesome dove or something out in the Wild West.
I could have been the third and a half. I don't know.
The police chief here, a couple police chiefs ago, was Sterling Owen the fourth. They called him IV.
That's funny. I love Southern nicknames. I tell you what, my family, my one side of my family, all probably all my great grandparents were illiterate, but they named all their kids initials because they didn't know how to write. So there was RC. My grandfather was LC, but it sounds like his name was Elsie, but it's LC. Like all the kids had initials. And then I had a friend who was named after his grandfather's signature. So his name was J. Period. The period was his formal signature was the period in there. Crazy. Ray says everybody likes Trey. I like plate. Yeah. Ray, you're silly. I love having the Facebook. Like since we've gone to live streaming our show, our postcards, I love it. I'm not as good at doing it.
They call it the cool kids table here because they never have to deal with commercials. They get all this stuff in the break.
They get all
There's a lot of shows that run live I listen to. Like, I would love to see what Rush and Sean and Glenn and all those dudes do in between their breaks. Probably nothing at all, but I know they've said that, like, Triple H or somebody just sits there in total silence, because one of the adages of radio is you never do radio off air. Like, your best stuff ends up happening organically in the time. Yeah, like, they say it even gets awkward sometimes in studio.
On air.
Come on, Sherry. That Sherry's coming, by the way. I can make that Facebook.
Ray hasn't tried to call back in.
He does something stupid. It's okay, Ross, we love you, and you know that. What? I thought it was great. Great! I thought it was great! It's not bad for just picking up on Saturday, right? Check this out. Look at this finger picking I learned. Wait, listen to this, Look how good I am. Watch this. Wait, for real, wait. In the morning. Welcome back to Real News. By the way, Roz, Sherry thought that was hilarious. Our other two guests are looking at me like, dude, what in the world is going on?
I almost lost my coffee, because when you go up to that high register,
Exactly, the finger picking part. I love the finger. He's like horrible at it. It's like they have to know. I think they have to know Mr. Henry a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. It reminds me of like some SCCTV, like some Canadian weird, I love weird Canadian comedy, and that is right up there. Kids in the Hall, something like that.
All right, let me ask this real quick. There's a scene in The 40-Year-Old Virgin where this guy tries to call a girl to set up a date, but he gets too nervous before he goes, and she answers the phone, and he panics in the middle, says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm calling to collect a debt." And she's going on this long sort of tirade about you should kill yourself, you should jump off a bridge right now. This is the conception that some people have of how bad these debt collector things go. Real quick, we have 8:54, about 4 minutes left before we hit this break. What are some of the worst war stories you've heard from your clients about the debt collection process?
Well, generally imprisonment. They'll threaten imprisonment, which is illegal.
Oh, I thought you meant actually, right, you actually go into prison, but no, threatening imprisonment.
Threatening imprisonment. They'll threaten garnishing when they hadn't even brought a lawsuit yet.
Is that illegal as well?
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
They got to mention that, hey, we got to sue you first. Generally, by the time they come to my office, that's no problem. We'll give you a fresh start, and you can avoid all that. Bankruptcy will stop any garnishment, any threat of collection, any the judgments, the collection of judgments. It's horrible if you get your wages garnished. You're a family of four making $50,000 a year. You've got 2 kids in school to support, and you lose 25% to on a medical provider, for example. That's where bankruptcy will help you get a fresh start.
Brian, now even in the world of your your grimiest third-party collection efforts out there, okay, working with student loan debt, I assume they train y'all fairly well. But even like the backdoor folks that are working to some shed somewhere, there's still some process of training they have to go through. Don't say this because it's illegal. Say this type thing so we can get our debt.
Well, third-party on student loans is different. They do train you. You don't, because you are monitored by the Department of Education, and you can't threaten them like first parties. There's like the horror stories you hear with other debt collections.
All right, let me give you and us the opportunity here. 2 minutes before we get to end this segment, we'll get back into some real news. Myself and Sherry Voluntary. If there is someone listening right now that is struggling with bankruptcy or knows someone that's struggling, wanting to consider that as an option, let me give you an opportunity to pitch you if you want to. You don't have to, but pitch your firm and maybe some other resources they might be able to consider out there.
Well, I really suggest calling our firm, Mayer & Newton, 865-588-5111. We'll offer you a free consultation. In fact, anytime you come visit us is free. You can email us at richardmayer@richardmayer.com. It's free. We will not charge for any consultations. If you have to file bankruptcy, I can assure all your listeners our fees are reasonable and we offer a reasonable payment plan. In fact, $50, we can be retained, and I will take all the phone calls.
$50?
That's it.
They can retain you for $50.
Absolutely.
And then you'll take the phone calls.
All the time. And I've done it for 20 years.
I might pay you $50 just to get some of my friends to stop calling me right now.
I'll be glad to do it.
Friends.
Yeah, right? Friends, yeah. But you would say be a bit wary if you go in to just hit up random Google. There's a lot of scam stuff out there sometimes.
Absolutely. The debt settlement companies, I would not recommend to anybody. If you want to try to pay your bills back, we always have Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which is a repayment plan. But it's federal supervision. Generally, to get into a Chapter 13, we don't charge any money down, and you make a payment to a Chapter 13 trustee for 3 to 5 years. Your creditors cannot collect a debt as long as you follow the rules. It will be accepted.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Go ahead, sir.
You were saying something earlier off air about negotiating with the company. So you were saying it would be better to have representation and negotiate that way rather than a conglomerate service or something.
We don't recommend that because a lot of these conglomerate services, if you have 10 different creditors, they'll take your money. They can maybe work out with, say, 7 or 8 of the creditors. All it takes is that 9th or 10th one to say, no, we're going to sue you and garnish you, and all your money is gone for naught.
Hey, 8:58, stick around, News Traffic Weather, all that. Be back with the question that I posed at the beginning of the 7 o'clock hour for Sherry Voluntary. What do anarcho-capitalists do with the Recode? Working through the system to change the system, is that even a possibility? Be right back after this.
Cough it up.
All right, y'all.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Thanks for letting me pitch.
Yeah. Well, you can't bring up bankruptcy and not give people a way to have a solution with it, you know?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Hey,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. You guys are great. I love you. I love your spirit.
Thank you.
I'm around these debt collector types all the time.
It's good seeing you again, Greg.
Yeah, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Come down to the club.
All right, buddy.
Yeah, I'll see you at the club.
See you later.
Nice to meet you.
Do you know the club they're talking about?
No. The boys club.
Yeah, basically it's a boys club.
Okay,
But
I'm not worried about boys club.
I think
boys clubs are good.
there's like 2 or 3 women that show up there. Facebook, by the way, I know this is awful what I'm doing to you right now, but just deal with it.
Is it like a smoking club?
Yeah, it's a cigar club.
The Smokies?
Yeah, it's Smokies. Yeah.
I love Smokies.
Yeah,
I used to smoke. I used to go there.
They got that little room in the back or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one over by me too, by where I live, called something Blue.
Blue Smoke?
Yeah, Blue Smoke.
Yeah, John's a member of like all those, I think.
Oh, is he Blue Smoke too?
We actually, I think you would have really liked this. They were trying to put through a bill at a national level that would have said if all you do is take different blends. Let's say I buy a blend from Colombia. Facebook list. Let's say I buy a blend from Colombia, I buy a blend from Nicaragua, and I buy a blend from, I don't know, Cuba. And I want to mix all 3 of those together to form a Smokies version of a cigar. You have to label yourself as a manufacturer, right? You have to qualify yourself as a manufacturer of cigars, like you're actually printing them out in some shop somewhere.
They own loose tobacco in their store.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
You can't just mix them and make a cigar.
Exactly.
Even one, right? You have to. You're a manufacturer now.
I had the.
That's like selling a car and calling yourself a car sale. Like.
I had all 3 guys on from all the smoke shops to talk about that. It was fun stuff. And then I got to go hang out with them afterwards. All right, Facebook. I'm going to take a break.
We'll definitely have you on again, Dick.
Just cussing out there. Did you hear that?
And he said when you're gonna go get Dick or whatever. When you're searching for Dick, I was dying. I was over here going like this.
Oh man. What?
She's searching for it.
Right, you're about to get in trouble back here. Alright, I'm gonna leave y'all with Charmelaise the God. No one's gonna have any idea what I'm talking about. But
Lunching at Harlem's famous Sylvia's restaurant with Reverend Al Sharpton. Now, it was an important day for Buttigieg because he's acknowledged that he needs more diversity on his list of supporters. Among the topics that came up, his new competitor.
How does climate change relate? In one way, we've got a lot in common, right? I mean, he speaks to accountability. In another way, the contrast could be more
more different. Right? I mean, we're talking about generational change. We're talking about how there's no going back. How we got to come up with something that'll work for the next 40 years.
Out front now, radio host who has interviewed 8 and counting Democrats running for president, Charlemagne the God, is of the Breakfast Club, joins me now.
What's up, Aaron? Thank you for having me
Good to
again.
see you. All right, so last time we were together, you were talking about, your impression of the various candidates. And you said Buttigieg was the most comfortable and authentic, those are the words you used, person that you had interviewed thus far.
Yes.
His communications director, Liz Smith, tweeted today a picture of him and Reverend Al Sharpton. So what do you make of this? Is this authentic, or is this just, I need to go kiss the ring? What is this?
I think it's authentic, and I think it's a combination of both. You know what I'm saying? Going to sit with, Reverend Al and Sylvia's is a rite of passage for a lot of candidates. He's only the second candidate of this season so far to go sit with Reverend Al. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think he is kissing the ring, and rightfully so. He was actually at the National Action Network convention the same day I was there with Reverend Al as well. So he's reaching out to the black community, as he should. So why not reach out?
So when Buttigieg was on your show, you talked about a lot of things. Obviously, race issues was on the list. You also talked about, Chick-fil-A, in light of him. Here is some of the headlines that you got.
Did Barack Obama set the table for someone like you?
I think so. I think in a way, if only because people said, this can't be done. Not just because he was our first black president, but
exactly that.
But also because he was unafraid to be smart.
What about Chick-fil-A? You like Chick-fil-A?
I do not approve of their politics, but I kind of approve of their chicken.
You my kind of guy, man. I'm worried about Mayor Pete's diet, because even today at Sylvia's, he had fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and collard greens. I know he's a young man, but god dang, diabetes can catch us all.
So do you think that the glare of the spotlight, I mean, this is all very new to him, and obviously he's coming, your words, authentic. He comes off that way. But is there a risk, do you think, of that changing?
Nah, I think he's handling it with grace and class. Like, he looks big for the spotlight. Like, even though he's from a small place, South Bend, Indiana, it looks like he's ready for the big stage. Like, even if he doesn't become, president in 2020, you can see that he's going to have a bright future in politics in some way, shape, or form.
So as you were being light there, you were talking about age, and obviously Buttigieg is talking about Joe Biden, changing the race. In that fight I played with Reverend Al Sharpton, he, though, is talking about their age difference, right? Trying to make this as a point of a generational change. Joe Biden is a different generation, right? I mean, let's just be frank. Joe Biden is what, going to be 77 years old this year. Does age matter?
Yes, I do think age matters. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're dealing with somebody like Joe Biden, because, I got my questions about Joe Biden. Like, after learning more about Joe over the past few months, I question why even Barack Obama picked him as vice president. Just because of things like the 94 crime bill. And, he didn't just, vote on the 94 crime bill. He wrote the 94 crime bill, especially one of the passages that was a real big push, for mass incarceration, and just things he said, like Barack Obama is the first mainstream black person who is clean and articulate. Like, just that wording, disturbs me in a lot of ways, So I just wonder if somebody that's Joe Biden's age, can you really teach in old dog new tricks?
And yet when he came out, Charlemagne, and announces his candidacy, he makes it all about race. I mean, right? All about Charlottesville, all about race. I'll play a brief clip of it so we can hear it together. Here he is.
Very fine people on both sides. With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime.
What do you make of that choice, given your concern?
That's not enough for me. Like, not being racist should be the basics of our president. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are your policies? You know what I'm saying? What are your new initiatives? What are you putting on the table that's going to help us, move forward in the next 30, 40 years as a country? That's why I prefer a Mayor Pete over Joe Biden, because I feel like Mayor Pete does have things of substance that he's put on the table. He does have actual ideas. I haven't heard any new policies from Joe Biden thus far.
Well, it's dream selling season, right? And as you point out, people have identified the black vote so crucial, right? So crucial and so central. So this reparations issue comes right in the heart of that. They've all been asked about it. You've asked, candidate after candidate about it. Let me play just some of their answers.
Now, what is it?
I don't know what I just played for y'all, Facebook. So, whatever. Anyways, this guy was saying the Recode stuff, it works itself out to where you have high rise after high rise. You have super swanky apartments that only the most rich and well-educated people can afford. And he said, now, who are usually the rich, well-educated people? And I said, well, and I thought he was going Democrat, Republican, right? And so I answered. I think he said something to the effect. Anyways, the point being is that I answered, well, you want me to say Democrat? They're going to vote Democrat, but because of the money thing, you're going to want to vote Republican. It's like, no, I'm talking white people. And I was like, oh, dude, I never would have gone there. And it's back to what you said. Facebook, talking about how there's overtly. I'll do this all on air. This will make more sense on air.
9:08 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Henry. First name Mr. Last name Henry. That's right. Crown Plaza call number that is open for you again. 865-888-TALK. 865-888-8255. Big thanks to our previous two guests talking about the bankruptcy issue. What I'm going to go into now is back to what I asked Miss Sherry Voluntary. I'm going to make this local with the Recode issue. I'm going to make this a bit more 30,000-foot view, talking some philosophical differences between capitalism, anarcho-capitalism. That's probably not the best way to say it. Republican, Democrat, whatever, all right? Let me set this whole thing up. I'm not sure if there's any people on Facebook that are Sherry's folks. If you are Sherry's folks, you know this information. Where can they find your stuff, Sherry?
You can go to Facebook and look up the Sherry Voluntary Show or Little L Productions. All my shows are on there. And you can go to YouTube, look up the Sherry Voluntary Show. I mean, it's a pretty unique name, so if you just look it up, you'll find it.
Now, for the people that may be in Facebook right now, or even listening terrestrial, she sent out a little blurb. I'm sure Daniel did as well. Daniel Blanchett, again, let's give him a shout out. Great guy, does a lot of the behind, and all the behind the scenes stuff,
all the technical stuff.
I got to tell you too, man. I just got word yesterday that the Real News podcast is now up on Google Play Music, and man, dude, that took me so long to try and figure out this stuff. So what Daniel does is an invaluable service for things like this, right? But
yes.
For those that are listening on terrestrial, 92.3 FM, AM 760, if you're listening there from Sherry's folks, you know her stuff, but you may not know this story about Recode Knoxville, all right? Hang on just a second. Caller in Crown Plaza, call number line 1. Hang on a second. We'll get you screened. What Recode is, if you're just joining, if you're Sherry's folks, if you just so happen to be scrolling across this channel, this is a national issue also, okay? Just Google Recode and then put in a city that's changed over the last couple of years, and you'll see where this is coming from. You might also see the same company, Camaros. It's an entity of about, I was told yesterday, anywhere from 10 to 15 people, something to that extent.
It's basically zoning.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, right? So it's zoning. And that doesn't sound like a sexy political topic, but what it ultimately gets down to is the government telling you, hey, you can do this with your property, you really can't do this with your property.
Right.
And for a lot of people, some people may not be too concerned. I'm just an average guy, I work my 9 to 5, I come back to my property, I don't care about what I can do with my property. You'll probably care about what your taxes are, though, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so one way or another, this is going to be concerning to you. And I'll tell you one more time, this is what Stimpy calls in all the time about. Just Google. I did this yesterday. We did this yesterday as a thought experiment. Roz actually did this. Recode whatever the city is. I think you can even do Recode Chattanooga or something, right?
Probably.
And you'll see an involvement from ICLEI. You'll see an involvement possibly from Camaros. Steve Hunley wrote an article yesterday. I think he puts it the best. Recode is supposed to be a secret. Why is Recode supposed to be a secret? In Steve Hunley's opinion, let me do it this way. The city council will tell you that Recode is a necessity, that there's 73,000 plots of land in the city of Knoxville, and they all need to be drastically rezoned. This is a comprehensive rezoning package. It'll change 50, 60 years of case precedent that are currently on the books. The way we used to handle this is essentially sort of on a case-by-case basis. Every year, or so I've been told, the city council and MPC would look at what's currently going on, and that year they would make updates. Seems somewhat reasonable. Well, 2 years ago, the MPC and City Council got together and said, hey, let's consider just making slight alterations and tweaks. We're going to go to this company called Camaros. They're going to put us together a package. That quickly became what I consider to be a decent analogy, where we gave allowance to some people in America to take the Articles of Confederation, slightly change the Articles of Confederation. They started from scratch and gave us the Constitution.
Did we, though? Like, that's the thing. That's the problem with the system. Like, you say, I didn't give them permission. You didn't give them permission. You know, some pencil neck gave them permission.
Some pencil
So,
neck, yeah.
I mean, and then zoning is about, are we ready for this?
Yeah,
We
sure.
Get into it. So zoning was started as a racist policy to keep white folks economically sound and to keep black folks from being able to enter the economy and work upwardly.
And let me stop right there, Sherry, and say, if you're not following with what Sherry is saying, go back. I was told this a few days back.
It's history. Like, it's in the language of the
Go back and look at the zoning codes in the 20s of Knoxville. It was overtly racist language. We need to have the whites here and the blacks here. This is not Mr. Henry's opinion. This is not Real News' opinion. This is the actual language with overt, blatant racist overtones that were in the language. Now, what I've been told is the current aspect and current version of Recode is similarly regressive back towards the 20s. Now it may not have the same racist overtones or overtly racist overtones, but inevitably works out to a very similar circumstance.
Right. That's what we were talking about in the break, was that, you know, the people doing it now aren't necessarily doing it for racist reasons, but it works out to the same thing because you have from the beginning where these policies were instituted and they had their effect, and people are still suffering from those effects. And so these new policies, they allocate resources. Like, it's your property. It's not their resource, but they believe it is. Like, they tax you for it, so you don't really own it because they can take it away from you at any time. But that said, it's a way for cities to please some people who are big tax, givers. They have big incomes to tax. And they put it to you like they did with Recode. It's going to make Knoxville more profitable.
Right.
We're going to all benefit from this. That's just not true. Like, me building a sidewalk with my tax money in West Hills does not benefit me. I'm sorry. Like, that's part of the violence of the taxation system. That I have to pay for something that people who can darn well afford it could pay for on their own. In front of your house, you should pay for it.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with that. I was just trying to get Roz's attention. We have a call in line 3. And I was talking with a person. I don't want to tell this person's name, but I was speaking with a person a couple days back, might have been a week or two ago. And it's a person that understands much more than I do about this Recode Knoxville situation. And I was trying to massage out of them their genuine feelings about what's going to change by way of the voting demographics. You know, that's the way I pitched it to him. And I said, okay, you don't have to necessarily posit that there's some motivation of an Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030 trickle down through ICLEI to change voting demographics. But I said, will it not inevitably work itself out that way? And this person said to me, well, think about it this way, okay? Think about in the city of Knoxville, there's been several times where through a pilot program or a TIF or anything similar to that, let's give you $40 million, which would in that sense be essentially the 20% down payment needed to build a massive high-rise with apartment complexes, much like Sherry would have to go. If she's going to go buy a home right now, you need 20% down, yeah? All right, well, 20% down on this particular building would have been right around $40 million, oddly enough. Anyways, this new not skyscraper, but high-rise apartments, super swanky apartments. This person said to me, the only people that can afford that are highly educated and are paid a lot of money. And he said, now, usually who does that work out to be? Now, I posed the question in the sense of voting Democrat or voting Republican, and I became confused because if you have a lot of money, you want to keep that money, maybe you're going to vote Republican to not be taxed as much, but if you're highly educated, the vast majority of PGs will vote Democrat, so I didn't know where to go. And I responded that way, and he said, white people. And I said, what?
Yeah.
Well, I never would. What do you mean, white people? I never would have went that route with it. And he said, this is what I'm saying.
Statistically.
He said, look back at the 20s code and see that there was overt racist language there. Now, I'm not saying there is overtly racist language currently with the Recode system, but it has a very similar tendency and it feels regressive in nature.
And the thing is that these kinds of things, they become institutionalized, right? So it was racist, overtly racist to begin with. But then they convinced you that you need it.
Yeah.
Right? They convinced you that zoning is a necessary function of any city and that you need it because politicians are not going to give you back the power over your own property to do what you see fit with it. Like, that's not that's not something they would ever do. So they have to give you another reason, because most people aren't racist. Let's just go that most people aren't racist and don't want to harm other people. So they have to convince you there's another ways. That's where it becomes like the systematic. Now everybody goes, well, zoning is necessary for cities. No, it's not. Houston doesn't have zoning. They do pretty well. People figure out their lives. We don't need politicians to figure stuff out for us, guys.
People figure out their own lives, yeah. This person told me another story, which in practicality makes a lot of sense. He said, okay, now let's think about this. You have a couple, they start dating, they're both making a lot of money. One went to Harvard, one went to Yale. They move into Knoxville. I don't know what their job is in Knoxville, but they move into Knoxville. They start living in one of these apartment complexes. They start dating, they move into the same apartment with each other. Now when they start having kids, they don't want to deal with the nonsense of dragging their $10,000 mountain bikes up these elevators the entire time. They want a little bit more room for their kids to play. So what do?
Suburbs.
They move out just a little bit further, and just a little bit further from the city. They don't want a long commute, and they're maybe relying upon public transportation anyways. So they move just a little bit further out. They find a house that normally would have been flipped. You would have bought for $60,000, $70,000. It would have been flipped. You're making, I don't know, you're selling for $140,000, $150,000, right? Well, these people think to themselves, well, I don't want to get in a bidding war. I want to purchase as quickly as possible. So if you ask them for $170,000, they're going to pay it. More importantly, if it's the one house in the street that has been flipped and they do get into a bidding war, dude, $180,000's nothing for some of these people. They're going to bid you up to $250,000. Well, what inevitably ends up happening? Obviously, the property value of the rest of that area ends up rising. This is what's subtly and slowly known, I suppose, as gentrification, right?
Yeah, but that's the market, right? Like if people want to do that, they're gonna. If that's what value is. Like if they're willing to pay $180,000 for a house, then apparently they see value in that. That's not something that politicians should be involved in.
I agree. I agree with you on that. But what this guy was saying to me was the epicenter of the cause even of that problem started with a situation like Recode. Started with a situation where you use taxpayer. If that happens organically, I don't think I have a problem with that. If it happens by way on the dime of $40 million of taxpayer, here's
the unintended consequences of government meddling.
Yeah, and the $40 million that everybody in the city was on the dime for is only going to be beneficial for the people that get to live in that one stupid building. And now that one stupid building is seeping out. Now, I'm not saying necessarily it's going to be the entire Recode problem. I just want to do that quick update of what Recode is and possibly where we're going with it so I can give Sherry's people in Facebook or otherwise a quick update on where we are. Where I'd like to move with this conversation, we have the Crown Plaza call number is stacked up. I'm going to hit this break, get to Andy's call. What about what ANCAP is? Maybe we should have started there, right? But Roberta and Stimpy are hanging on. What I eventually want to get to in this hour for Sherry is that an anarcho-capitalist, a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, and a Green Party member are now all of a sudden on the same page about this Recode issue in Knoxville. And
Thank you for joining us.
And I don't know if I've heard a reasonable solution from any of them, myself included. Myself included, okay? I have Recode Michael calling in and saying what we need to do is have some benevolent attorney that brings an injunction. Possibly, but I'm not sure how likely that is to happen. I want to ask an anarcho-capitalist, and I get the response of saying, not from Sherry, but what I would presume the response to be, well, you had a problem with the start of it. Well,
yes.
I don't know what you do now. Any response I get is frustrating, and I'm not sure, do you, as an anarcho-capitalist, or even a libertarian for that matter, do you have to become a part of the system so that you can affect the system? Because the system will inevitably infect you. And
that's the argument of some people. That's
9:20 in the morning. Hit this break. Be right back.
You can try one of these chairs.
Sorry, what?
I said you can try one of those chairs if you want. These chairs are awful.
Why am I down
Oh,
here?
you said sinking. I thought you said squeaking.
Yeah, squeaking too. Squeaking and sinking. My friend Clay is on my dear friend.
Clay, what's up? Clay, tell me how you feel about this sign right here. Can you see that? That's one of my favorite signs in the whole city. It is.
I love that.
Aside from my Glenn Jacobs sign thing right there.
Yeah.
If you're a dragon or a unicorn, I don't care, man.
Clay writes for the 10th Amendment Center.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, and he lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and he's involved with my friend Mike Meharry's organization, We See You Watching Lexington, where the city of Lexington sued Mike about asking about the surveillance cameras.
Oh, really?
And, yeah.
and went against the state attorney general and everything. So he's involved with a lot. He's a liberty guy. Like he's straight up.
That's pretty awesome.
Legit.
How do you find you living in Lexington?
We're a small number. Like ANCAPs are very small number of people. So we seek each other out. Like
yeah.
Pretty hard. Yeah.
Well, look, I told you it was a good thing for you to come in this show. I don't think I've heard from Andy before. We got new callers that listen to me every day that I'm now wondering and finally questioning, as I suppose they should, what even is ANCAP? We'll go to that next. I'm telling you though, Sherry, I think most of the people, not most of, but one of the primary reasons I think why Republicans don't consider ANCAP is they don't even know what it is. They may have never even heard of it before. I didn't hear of it necessarily until you brought it up.
I'll tell you why they don't consider it if they do find out about what it is. Because it doesn't allow them to use a violent system against people.
Well.
And if you like the system, you like the system of violence that says you have to and you must, or we stick a gun in your face.
Yeah, but that's a
you don't think of it that way, but that is what it is. You don't.
But that's a deep dive into someone's own personal philosophy who would finally admit that to themselves. I think eventually you're probably correct.
It's not that deep a dive though. You go, is it okay for you to steal from me out of my personally? What would the answer be?
I would say no.
Is it okay for you to hire someone to steal from me?
No.
So why can you vote someone to steal from me?
Oh, you mean
It's violence.
Like
because they will come and put a gun in your face if you don't do it.
They were put in boxes and they came out all the same. And there's doctors and lawyers and business executives, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same.
Hey, it's 9:24 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News. It is Voluntary Tuesday with Miss Sherry Voluntary. Being that it is Voluntary Tuesday, let's start with Andy on Crown Plaza call number line 1. This is possibly where we should have started with you to begin with a couple weeks back, but Andy's on live with us right now. Subheading here says, question for Sherry, what is ANCAP? And Andy, I'll tell you, we were just having this conversation off air. I think if I were to put a stat out there, I'd probably say close to 70, 80% of our audience, Roz, right? Somewhere around there would probably ask the same question, yeah? Like, what even is ANCAP, right?
Well, he considers himself a conservative libertarian/libertarian.
All right. All right, so he might agree with where Sherry's come from. Anyways, Andy, go ahead, buddy.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I am a conservative libertarian. For instance, I am an advocate for complete legalization of drugs. I despise redistribution. So that's where I am. But an aspect of ANCAP that I'd love to hear Sherry respond to is, to me, it is utopian in a similar way to Marxism. In other words, Marxism holds out that man is going to be good and mankind will give their labor away just in a benevolent way. They'll work their hardest for the good of society, for this communitarian principle that doesn't work in principle because it doesn't take into account the true nature of man and the fact that people will try to take advantage of other people's labor and they won't give it their all. Well, to me, you have the same problem with respect to a tax base that if it's all voluntary, then a lot of people aren't going to, there'll be some benevolent-minded folks, but most people will try to take advantage of others' contributions, and that ultimately you won't, it would not be, it's a utopian system that would not work in practice.
So basically what you're saying is that the old adage that, you need a government because men are not angels, correct?
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah. So you give men the power of government who are not angels, and that's supposed to be better? That's sort of the...
That's why rule of law is so important. And
yes, and you would have common law in an anarcho-capitalist system. We are completely respectful of property rights, and property rights is what all the law is based on. So, you'd have common law, and I understand what you mean about it. It is idealistic for sure, but it's not utopian because we don't believe that you should work for anyone else. Like that's a personal value that people, I would hope they would have. But all of life is about incentives. And so you're incentivized to do your best. Like it's radical freedom and radical personal responsibility. You can't have one without the other. So when in this system, people are incentivized not to be personally responsible. So of course there's these systems where people don't work and people take advantage of each other, and that would not necessarily stop because you had a system that didn't involve government force, but it would certainly lessen. And so, I mean, that's we don't believe in utopias. Like there is no utopia. Humans are still human and they're still going to do bad. It's just a matter of giving this huge brute force that we know is going to be violent against us and is going to have our neighbors' approval to come and put a gun in our face and say, you didn't pay your taxes, you're going to jail. Like that's the difference, is that we don't expect people to just be angels.
And I hear where Andy's coming from. And Andy, to be frank, this is where I have I don't want to call them concerns. It's just similar confusions as to you do as well. Because I like the underlying philosophy of anarcho-capitalism. Frankly speaking, I think most people in the country, especially all conservatives, the whole Reagan-esque government is not the problem. I mean, government is not the solution. Government, you heard the whole thing, right? When it comes to this idea of a sort of ubiquitous or consensus or that everyone is going to be on the same page about something, that's where it becomes confusing for me as to, let's say 95% of the population in any community or anywhere says, I need to get from point A to point B, I'm going to pay for this road, but only the 95% that are paying can ride on this road. Well, how then do you force the other 5% to either pay or not ride on the road? And this is what I'm saying is, whatever enforcement mechanism that is, whether it's common law or otherwise, it feels like we're playing just a semantic game of, well, we're just, because we're not calling it the state or calling it government, it's still operating in a similar capacity.
There's governance, which is different than government. So government, which I would call the state, is force, because it's you saying, I want taxes. I want to pay for something with taxes, and so therefore I'm going to hire somebody, basically is what it is, to rob you. And I'm going to say it's okay because it's the system and it's what we need for us. That's called civilization. I don't think that's very civilized. But, to the point that, I forget what the second point of your question was.
The second point of difference between governance and government
yes. So most people think about in terms of the system we have now, and I get that because, I used to be a conservative Republican. But you can't think about it in the terms of the system that we have now, because it wouldn't be the system we have now. But there are many incentives that are bad things that are incentivized by the system.
With that, I agree.
We wouldn't have a broad 300 million person thing called We the People, really? Like, you can't get people to agree on what they're going to have for dinner, and you're going to say that we should all come together and do, no, it should be small communities developing themselves, governing themselves. It's bottom up rule instead of top down rule, which is what we have. Think about the period of time between the Declaration of Independence and before the Constitution. There were still laws, there was common law, people lived, we're still here, right?
Yeah, I think this conversation would make much more sense to people prior to the gutting of the 10th Amendment, possibly prior to the running through the Commerce Clause. But Andy, buddy, we sort of spoke over. I'll give you the last minute here if you want to follow up.
I have a suggestion too.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's a great book called Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard. He is the person who coined the term anarcho-capitalism. If you're really interested in understanding it a little better, that's a great place to start. The Most Dangerous Religion or Superstition by Larkin Rose is another good one. Hit me up on Facebook, Andy. I'll be glad to talk more to you.
Yeah. Well, I think, while we were talking, it occurred to me that really the concept that or how economists would describe this as game theory. That's what they study. They study what are the reactions, amongst society when you have these kinds of institutions, who really participates, who tries to take advantage of it. I think that's what game theory is about. And, I just would like to know if anybody is actually, studied that. But what Mr. Henry was saying, I think we would have to go back to a very different society, and I don't think we can go back to that because what worked in those early colonial times was the very tight knit community, which was very homogenous. They were centralized around their church largely, and I just don't know if we can get back to that.
The
That's
state
my
has
only point.
destroyed communities, and you're right. It takes community. Absolutely. That's why I do what I do, because I want to change people's minds about the use of force. And we can talk a little bit about self-ownership because that's really where all of libertarianism comes, property rights. And so...
Yeah, that'll actually get us back into the Recode stuff. Anybody, have we heard from you before, by the way?
Yeah, I've called a few times, yeah.
Good deal. Awesome, man.
I enjoy the show, man.
Thanks, Andy.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate you listening, Andy. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
There goes Andy, 9:32, a little bit late on this break. Clay made a funny comment on Facebook. I'm going to get back to that in a second. Be right back after this break.
Hand washing is important. That is true. Oh, man. They're gonna, speaking of the hand washing stuff, they're making a hard push for this measles booster shot stuff.
He said, look at the campaigns. They all offer you a utopia while on their stump. Then when they get down, they start stump training the citizens. He is absolutely right.
Ray falls in those good points every now and then.
I know. Man, he fell all in. I'm smelling what you're stepping in, Ray.
Recode in the Pentagon? What? Listeners to the show, man. Tying it together.
Oh, Stimpy's coming.
You know Stimpy? Michael?
Yeah. I didn't know him before. He's since we hooked up on Facebook.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, he's good.
My peoples is coming out the woodwork. Like, that's the thing. When I first became an ANCAP, I didn't know anybody else in town.
Yeah.
Now I know like 15.
Yeah?
There's quite a few. And you got Glenn Jenkins, which I don't want to say that on there.
Yeah.
I don't want to. He's one of those, got to use the political system types. But our point is all the same. Let's get less violence among people. Like, let's have a new culture of understanding that it's not okay just because you call it government. You wave a magic wand and all of a sudden government is able to do things that the individual is not, because all powers of the federal government are delegated by individuals, and they cannot delegate to you a power that they do not have. So if you can't steal from me, they cannot steal from me.
Right.
No matter how good the cause, it doesn't matter. And there were roads in this country before the federal income tax.
Right.
People figure out life. It's not really as complex. I get why people see it as so complex, because I used to too. Like, people, what about this? What about this? If people want roads, businesses will probably pay for them because they want you to be able to get to their businesses. Like, there's all sorts of solutions, and I can't offer you every solution because it hasn't happened yet. And innovation makes things work, but we have a system where people go, this is right, and therefore this is what we're going to do. And it doesn't really meet the needs of people. It's not people doing it for themselves and coming up with the best solution.
Maybe the better way to demonstrate to people, I feel like people get hung up on, and this is where I get hung up on, well, we already have a system for 240 years that's been dealing with population that's now risen to 325 million people. It's not just impractical, it's illogical to think that we could try and go back to an anarcho-capitalist system now. Maybe just as a philosophical thought experiment, to play out something of, all right, let's say that there's a nuclear holocaust, some insane hypothetical that would put America in the position of, you got to start from scratch again. Or let's say we took Thomas Jefferson at his word and said, what was it, every 17 years? 20-something years?
Like 19 to 20 years.
Something, every 19, whatever years you said, you should consider reframing the Constitution, not rewriting, whatever that thing is. The point is, whatever hypothetical gets you back to starting at square one, what would the ANCAP version be of? Would there be any necessity for an overarching framework? Is it just left to state by state? Is it just local communities? Do you not do anything? You just let people figure it out?
I'd say probably the best size is like the county level. Counties would be, like in Ireland, you have county, core county.
Right.
Like they had, like, an anarchist style system, a decentralized system, we'll call it that, for 2,000 years. And they had laws, they had judges. The system worked pretty darn well. So, I mean, and like everything, it goes by the wayside eventually. But 2,000 years, that's a lot longer than we've been around.
It is.
And we're already collapsing under our own weight. Like the state has so much, and this is the thing, like people feel, government makes them feel comfortable because they've been taught to rely on government to make them feel comfortable.
But we created that government, though.
We did not.
You and I didn't, but by we,
Neither
I'm saying,
did the founders or the framers. They didn't create the government we have.
They would have had to. Who would have otherwise? I don't know what you mean.
They started something. They centralized power. That was where they went wrong.
Sure.
But then it grows into this monster. Nobody created it. It is in itself, and takes on a life of its own because people seek power. This is the point that I was trying to make. I don't know if I did a good job of it, but that men are not angels. That's why you don't give them the power over other people's lives and the power of violence. That's really what we have is a system where we've said government violence is okay.
But
individual violence
It's
is
tough
not.
for people to get their head around that the founding fathers were just a conglomerate of manipulators.
But that's not what I'm saying. They were doing the best they understood, and they fought. Like, you had Federalists and Anti-Federalists.
That's where I was going to go to.
So-
For decades upon decades, we debated this stuff. I mean,
Right, but it still doesn't make it the best thing. Like the
Well,
most
it could get
best
better,
solution.
sure, it could definitely get better, but I keep running back to that now there's this untouchable entity called the state, whatever the state is, and it's strange. It's to figure out what the genesis of that was, or like it's something that we had no control over creating. I would have to say, if you go back far enough, now yes, it's gotten way out of control, but the epicenter of that way out of control was given over by the people. Now, it might have been only a slight minority of people, or in our representative republic would have been, what, 3/4 or 2/3 of the people, but there was still a sizable portion of the people that created the systems.
3% of people are what it took to do the revolution in this country. It wasn't a consensus. Like, it started with 3% of people. So majorities are, like, morality and majorities don't go together. Just because there's a majority that says something's okay doesn't make it okay.
We'll have to continue this, man. The best stuff is happening off air, unfortunately, but yeah.
The FMA audience, I think probably the best stuff is happening off air today, but that's what tends to happen when we have Miss Sherry Voluntary on. It's not to say that we can't do this. It's not we're like violating FCC. We're none of that. No, it's just we just jump right back in. Sherry and I have these conversations all the time with each other anyways, and what ends up happening is we have topically driven stuff on the FM side, and as soon as we get off...
he was watching CNN fake news.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I keep getting fake news pushed on me. No, I just basically pick up where I left off with Sherry, either from previous conversation today or
on the phone.
Yeah, right, from a week ago or something. Anyways, so Facebook, get on, you're getting that. Let's go to Roberta. She's been hanging on the longest here in the Crown Plaza call number. That number, by the way, 865-888-TALK, 865-888-8255. Roberta, the subheading here just says Recode and Pentagon. Very interesting. Tie this together for me.
Hi. Rico and what?
Oh, I was just reading your subheading Roz put up here, just Recode Pentagon. What's on your mind, though?
Oh, even if it didn't work, it would, I think, would be worth the effort. A writ of mandamus on the city council.
Huh.
If it would, first of all, it does exist, and I think a lower court could issue that writ, that they have to represent it. If every flaw, that violation they've committed, as detailed as possible, inclusive of their wrongdoings, was presented to the court for a writ of mandamus, whether it was, no matter what the result of that, it would indicate, for one thing, when they run for an election again, this can be used against them, that they were so bad that we had to go to court to get action from them.
Hey, what Roberta's talking about, if you need to know what that writ pertains to, it's an order usually from a higher court or from any court system for that matter to an inferior government official that's ordering that government official to properly fulfill their official duties, or in most instances to correct some abuse of discretion, or I guess in this sense what we would call discretion. But sorry, Roberta, I just want to make sure people knew what you were talking about. But go ahead.
Thank you. And the other thing it would indicate, a second thing it would indicate is they could end up having to pay their own legal bills. And third, and above all, just simply the act of filing it would send chills down their spine that the public has had enough. And they will take action, and the game's over. Even if it isn't fully over, it's over for them. That they would, I do believe they would give second thought. Most people do not want to go to court, at least not as a defendant.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Well, Roberta, let me ask you. This is what I started the 7 o'clock hour with, and what I eventually wanted to get to Sherry, pertaining specifically to Recode. I asked this guy Kelvin yesterday, what percentage of people living in the city actually know about Recode? He said probably 3%. Now, that to me says that 97% of the people living in the city don't know about it. Let's presume that those people did eventually find out about it, because they're going to find out about it whether they want to or not when it passes, right? If their taxity, that's what it's called. If their property taxes increase. So they're all going to find out about it eventually. Now we're all on the same page where Republicans and Democrats, Libertarians, Anarcho-capitalists, and Green Party members, we're all frustrated about the same thing. Now, we should have done something about it before. Do you think this is an actual viable solution to try and file a writ like this? Do you ever see, I guess what I'm asking for is I'm really looking for a practical sense, not what makes us feel good, a practical sense of what can possibly be done at this point.
I think it's very practical. I am a practical old lady. But anyway, yeah, they can be forced to do this. And we have a few judges. There's one woman judge in particular that I think would do as she was told by the public. But, and if not, I can encourage her to. But anyway, I have some videos of her. And I'm not above using them.
She said I can encourage her to. That's awesome.
I love Roberta's calls.
Roberta, there's got to be some good people left, right? And by good people, I mean there has to be. Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you. But there has to be some by good people. I mean, whatever system we have that are saying, I'm beholden to you. You put me up here. Whatever you tell me I can and cannot do is the only thing I'm going to do.
Yeah, but we can put their feet in the fire. And there is nothing like a nice little court order, but it will inhibit them from running again if we don't accomplish anything else. It ruins either they comply or they go. And a few letters to the editor at the Knoxville Sentinel, which isn't my favorite publication. But nevertheless, people do read those, and personal letters to there expressing concern about this can educate more people.
Roberta, I'm gonna get to Stimpy's call. I always appreciate hearing from her. Did you want to comment with Roberta real quick? Or? Yeah, Roberta. Thanks, by the way. We'll talk to you soon, Roberta.
Thank you, Roberta.
There goes Roberta.
Roberta's woke.
Yeah, Roberta is. Roberta, if you don't know what woke means, it's the most enlightened person in this county, in this city, is probably Roberta. That's for sure. Yeah.
I think the problem is education takes longer than the people we've given power to. They do what they want, and then education after the fact is a lot harder to get it undone.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's the problem with the power we give away, and then it's enacted upon us. And...
All right, let's go to Stimpy. Depending on how long this call might be, Stimpy, I might cut you off in 3 minutes and carry you over through the break. What's on your mind, sir?
Good morning. Yes, it's been an excellent conversation today, and I totally am in full agreement with Roberta. I love her, and I can't wait to actually have a chance to actually sit down face-to-face and talk to her.
Stimpy, sorry, man. I'll tell you, she's far better in person. And I know people, there's no way Roberta could be better than she is on it. I'm telling you, Roz will attest to this too. She is far better in person even than she is on air. It's incredible.
I want to interview Roberta for
now.
my show.
She'll blow your
Put
mind.
it out there.
You can only handle 15 minutes at a time with her because she blows your mind too much, right? After a while, you can't even speak anymore because I forgot how to.
I can definitely see that. She is one sharp cookie. But some of the things that I was actually wanting to address as well is just because where you were talking about this whole Recode operation and how you guys check this out as well, there is the ICC, that is the International Codes Coalition. When you actually find out who they are, you start looking at their parallels to ICLEI, and I actually found some legislation that was actually passed by the United Nations about establishing all of these codes corporations that are to work internationally. But like I said, I've been saying for a while that these things that are happening are not organic occurrences, and it's just... I've said it before. Whenever people they don't take an interest because it's the least sexy topic or it's not interesting. I'm getting ready for some jazz in the park coming up this weekend, and one of the guys I'm going to be playing with, I was practicing with him last night, so I mentioned it to him, and he lives in South Knoxville. He goes, Recode Knoxville, what's that?
Yeah.
And that was last night. And I go through explaining to him a little bit about what it is. And, the sad fact is that it's been going on for 2.5 years now, and he still knows nothing about it. And I told him about how they're trying to force it into law without our recognition or regard, because the simple fact of this matter is that they're saying, because where you were also talking about, I think it was another segment about, well, they say this, they say that. Well, who is they? Because they love to always say that, well, our biggest problem is that we need to accommodate for higher density in the city. Well, who's they? It's not the people that live here.
Right.
So who's they?
Right. Well, in this case, it would probably be...
they make up problems that they tell people they have, but... where people are going, where's that? Like, I don't have that problem.
This would be interesting for the real audience to do, or anybody for that matter. Go look at the density levels of Knoxville in the 20s and 30s and compare them to right now. I'm not even going to tell you what they are. Just go look at the density levels and look at the code behind that as well. I would say too, just to make sure that I'm not lying, go look at the overtly racist overtones in that original code as well, and see if there's any similarity to what's going on currently. And Stippy, we've got to hit this break, sir. I'll give you the last 30 seconds here, though.
Yeah, it's just when it comes down to actually trying to get the community together and actually trying to do something, I am in full compliance with that, and I think it's a fantastic idea just because at this point in time, especially when we look at the illegal actions of our mayor, and what's really interesting is that my neighbor, she is a Democrat, and then when I was telling her about what this Recode is, she became disgusted. And she was livid.
They all do. That's why I started this whole. That's why the theme of today's show has been the commonality between Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party, ANCAP doesn't matter. Occasionally, we're all disgusted about the same things. Sherry would say we always.
ANCAPs are libertarians, by the way.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Don't
Sorry.
need to differentiate.
Do we not? Some libertarians. Whatever. That's a totally different conversation.
There are levels, but yes,
Yeah.
ANCAPs are libertarians.
Let's. I'll say it this way, Stevie. Right. I'll end it by this. If you agree with Steve Hunley of this. The people of Knoxville are not being represented by their city council. They are being dictated to. In East Tennessee, there's one thing you do not do in politics. You do not tell voters how it's going to be. That's exactly what your government is doing right now. Stimpy, buddy, we always appreciate hearing from you. We'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
There goes Stimpy. Hey, I'm putting Sherry way on the spot here, and I know she loves it when I do that. I got this question from Chris on Facebook, and it figured to be an interesting way to end the show today, even though she's going to say right now, I'm going to need an hour to play this out. Yeah. Either way, Chris asked on Facebook when we come back, what does the prison system look like under an ANCAP system? And I don't want her to respond to that yet.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to hit this break and do a whole segment with it. But I think people are just now coming around to, at least for my audience, where I don't think, and I don't want to speak for your audience, but I think some of the audience has either been confused by it or afraid to genuinely be open to considering a new political
I love the questions.
philosophy.
At least you're thinking about something different. And I'm not. I guarantee you, no anarcho-capitalist wants to enact violence to get the system. To get the system that they want. But violence is enacted upon us all the time for the system we have.
Hey, look, trying to figure out new philosophy, trying to constantly question yourself, and trying to continually find objective truth is something that I pride myself on, and hopefully people around me, Sherry as well, can attest to. Yeah, he asks for information all the time.
He's very fair-minded.
9:51. Hit this break. Be right back.
Bob Murphy. He's an economist, and he does a lot with thinking about what solutions there would be for prisons and things like that. And yeah, but, I mean, I don't know. The answer is.
Yeah.
But the community will figure that out. Like, the onus isn't on me to have all the answers. Like, that's what people, I mean, they want answers.
Right.
But they're the ones who are saying the system we have is okay. And I'm the one saying, well, that's immoral. So it can't be okay.
Well, see, but I would say most people, even a lot of Republicans, most of the listeners to this show would definitely say, no, the current system is not okay. I don't know if there's a single person that listens to my show that would say, like, yeah, the war on drugs is effective.
They say it's not okay. But then when they want something, what do?
Use that system.
They want to vote about it. They want to tell, like gay marriage is such a great issue. They want to tell you, like, what you can do with your, partner. Like,
right.
Why? What is that? Like, there's no reason that one person should be able to tell another who they can sleep with.
Oh, you mean Republicans?
Yeah, anybody. I mean, there are Democrats that are, they're very few and far between, but, it's a matter of going, how much violence is okay with you?
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to.
See, someone like me would say, all right, there was a time, I think Texas, when was that case, y'all? 86, 82? Anyways, in Texas up until, you have to go?
No, I haven't snapped a pee.
Oh.
I'll just tell them the hour one more time.
But in Texas up until very recently, I don't know if it was 60s, 70s, or 80s, but it was very recently, sodomy was illegal, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think
it's still illegal in places. It's not enforced, but
yeah, that may. I don't know if it is still. Either way, but I think a lot of Republicans, at least the Republicans that I deal with in law school, would say it's not necessarily about one group saying you can't do this. It's about, at least legally speaking, again. What? Nah. Legally speaking, it would be about how do we use that violence how do we use the state to incentivize certain behavior? That's what marriage was, at least for me. The way I've always seen it is, if people are going to get married, we want to incentivize them to stay together. It wasn't like you have the right to get married. Anyone has the right to get married. It was just, if you're going to get a particular tax break that the government gives you.
Is one of the things that contributes to the failures of marriage.
Absolutely.
The welfare system,
I understand.
We would have far fewer divorces if it weren't for the military.
Well, but you know where I don't think the government ever should have had any place in marriage to begin with.
They should have.
I don't. But as long as you're going to get in there.
That was a racist policy as well.
Yeah, good old Recode. Recode, Tennessee.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Make us like Cali. California, that is.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we want to become. Hey, and Facebook, Chris said, Lawrenceburg, Texas. Chris, are you Googling this stuff, or are you just that good? That's what the case was. We were talking about off air. That's exactly what the case was. Anyways, he said in Facebook before this last break, wanted to ask Sherry a question, and I'm giving her all of 3 minutes to answer this, which is awesome.
Wow. I'm so lucky.
Yeah, that's right. We're trying to parse out, what is this ANCAP thing? What's the differences? And he wants to know, under an anarcho-capitalist system, how might a prison system work?
I don't know.
Yeah. But that's explain that.
So we are about bottom-up governance, so that gives the priority and the most power to the individual. And individuals live in communities, and that's what would make the governance of those communities. So, but you would also have, be able to opt out of things. Nobody could force you to do anything. But anyways, that aside, people will come up with solutions. I mean, there were solutions before there was this overarching state. There's solutions out there. And I put in the comments on Facebook, there's a man named Bob Murphy. Robert Murphy is a professor, and he deals a lot with what might some of the practical applications for that legal system. David Friedman, who is Milton Friedman's son, the economist, he is also an anarcho-capitalist, by the way. Mm-hmm. He deals with private law a lot and prison systems. So if you want to know more about that, I'll put a link to something that he's done in there too. But those are two really good resources. So it's not my purview. I can't give you all the answers you want. But what I can say is that people figure this stuff out without government. It doesn't take a government to know when someone's done something wrong and put them in jail.
There are some objective standards that everybody would have to adhere to,
yes.
regardless of whether you agree with it or not,
I can
right?
tell you this. There would not be any non-violent offenders in jail, in prison.
Sure.
Like, that would not occur
Right.
in our anarcho-capitalist world. Like, you would not be able to use the legal system to put someone who has not committed violence against someone in a cage.
Yeah, and that statement wouldn't even be too crazy to even some of your hardcore Republicans. There's a lot of Republicans I know that are hardcore Republicans that would say, yeah, maybe we should decriminalize marijuana.
Right.
This is absurd. Yeah.
It's created a huge problem. We have people who, for no other reason than that they've put something in their bodies that the state says is wrong, are in a jail, a cage, away from their families, not being able to provide, not being able to be of value to their community, to their families. And people say that's okay because this one is legal. And this is where it gets down to legality versus morality. They're not the same thing. Just because something's legal doesn't make it moral. Slavery was legal. It wasn't moral.
And Chris followed up by saying, all right, look, not opposed to ANCAP theory, but I don't see how it doesn't devolve into Walking Dead style warlordism. Now, Chris has a tendency to be somewhat hyperbolic.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I understand people.
But I will say, even an ANCAP would say, all right, someone like a Jeffrey Dahmer or a Ted Bundy or something. Okay, now these guys probably would say, I don't agree with your version of murder. I kind of like doing it. Eating people, something I prefer. Right. Whether all of society says that's a good or bad thing or otherwise, this is my thing. Right. Now you would say that no. There are certain objective standards that
murder is wrong. Right, okay. Always. You don't need a law to tell you murder is wrong. It's a natural law. Yeah. Murder is wrong. And guess what? The system we have didn't stop anyone from being violent against anyone else. It does not stop your neighbors. Your neighbors don't come and rob you because your neighbors don't want to rob you. People are not evil. This is the thing. This is what the state makes you think, that you need them to keep your neighbors from coming and taking over. If they wanted to do that, they could go in your house, murder you, and take your stuff right now. It happens every day.
Hey, think about it this way. What's the argument Republicans make all the time? That 90-something% of mass shootings take place in gun-free zones?
Yes.
Come on, it's going to do it.
And in an anarcho-capitalist society, I guarantee you, gun ownership would be much, much higher than it is now.
There you go. It's Voluntary Tuesday. Got to hit news, traffic, weather, all that. Glenn Beck coming up next. Be back tomorrow doing it big.
Oh, it's over. I was thinking there at the 9 o'clock hour. Wow, it goes so fast.
It does. It really does, especially when you have guests in. I mean, I really appreciate you being in.
Thank you. It was a great show. Like, it's good. I mean, I don't mind the questions, and I get people it scares them because you hear anarchy and you think Walking Dead.
It's just, I don't think people, it goes back to what I said before. I think the vast majority of people that bristle at the anarcho-capitalist stuff are only doing it because they have no effing clue what it is. They just don't get it. And you're possibly right. Once they start to get it, more may bristle at because they start to realize, well, I like the violence when it works out towards me. That might be some percentage of it, but I think the vast majority.
I think we have to make some people do some things.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. And you just have to convince it. Okay, so you are okay with violence against your fellow man.
But I think the more you're on, the more of my normal audience is going to start to realize, like what you just said at the end of the show when I brought up how many percentage of mass shootings take place in gun-free zones, and you said, and oh, by the way, under anarcho-capitalism, a lot more people be owning guns. Well, that's what a lot of Republicans are pushing for. Yeah.
Like, that's where there are many places, and this is why having a philosophy is better than having a political position, because a philosophy underrides that I believe that every person has the right to protect themselves.
Right.
That is inviolate. It's not because your neighbor, like you did something bad, you smoked a joint before and went to jail, so now you can't own a gun, you can't protect yourself. No, that is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is still taking your right away for something nonviolent. That's not okay. And so the philosophy smooths all these issues out, and we touch on what we would call conservative and liberal ideas all over the place. But libertarianism, small L libertarianism, is not about issues. It's about a philosophy that informs you on the issues.
Do you know anything about I don't know where to go. This guy Ben in Facebook, I assume he's one of your people. Walter Block.
Yeah.
About privatizing everything. See, that's if I were ever running for anything, that's how I would like to push a lot of stuff. Because if I come up here and say,
a lot of Republicans say that.
Well,
but then they don't believe it because they don't want to privatize law. They don't want to privatize police.
See, but I wouldn't want to privatize police or law. But at least some things. I'm going to be honest with you, at least her audience. I can never push myself far enough to be a full-on ANCAP. At least not yet. I'm getting closer. I'm getting there. She's trying to convince me, but laws, police, fire departments, certain things. This is law school speaking through me, though. Certain things have to be there. But I will say, if I go out there and pitch an idea, which I am totally behind, of government getting out of marriage altogether, a lot of voters, potential voters, are going to be like, dude, that's Betty. That's ridiculous. How would you ever do that? Maybe someone like a Walter Block could give an idea like, well, all you got to do is privatize the economy. Why would the government have any right to tell you whether you can get married or not anyways? Well, because they incentivize through taxes.
But then
couldn't you do that without
once they take that power, then they teach you why you need it that way. And what do most people say when you say, well, why should government be involved in marriage in the first place? They say, well, they started it in order to stop people from marrying their brothers and sisters. No, they didn't.
Do you have people say that to you?
Oh, absolutely. That's to keep people from having incest. No, it's not. It was to keep races from marrying each other, intermarrying. That's what it was about. It was not about your good. Most people don't want to screw their sister.
Like, well, if they do, they're going to do it anyway.
Right, they're going to do it. They do it now. That's the thing, but it's a very small portion. You don't need a law to tell you that's not a good thing. It's not a natural thing for most people.
And see, what I've been coached to say is that the reason why government had anything to do or ever got involved in marriage to begin with was so that we didn't have a bunch of bastardized generations of people running around. That if a man and woman are going to get together, we want to financially incentivize them to stay together so that they will raise children.
But what they actually do is they de-incentivize them to stay together by creating a welfare system.
Now that is true.
We don't need.
That is absolutely what it's turned into. That is correct. The system of welfare has now turned the whole thing into. Now we don't want you to get married.
One of the things people do is get married. That is an institution that supersedes the United States government.
What happened well before
it doesn't need to be incentivized. People are incentivized to do it by what's called biology, right? They're incentivized to do that. So you don't need to incentivize that further. They do it for taxes.
Well, but let me ask you this, though. All right, but if I take that to its logical conclusion, what you're saying then is that if we got rid of the welfare state, the marriage rate and the rate of children born out of wedlock of children in lower socioeconomic communities right now, the out of marriage wedlock or the out of marriage birth rate, I think is, don't quote me, Facebook, please. It's like 58% or something. It's wild. It's outrageous right now. I guess what are you saying that if we got rid of the incentivization through the welfare system, that rate of out of wedlock birth would decrease?
Probably. Well, no. This is the thing. You still have a system where people, if they have a baby and they can't afford it, the government will pay. It means you and I will pay for it.
Yeah.
Because we're forced to. In a system. In an anarcho-capitalist system, what do I always say? Radical freedom, but also radical personal responsibility. You don't make people responsible by not giving them their own responsibility. Here, this is your child, your problem.
Right.
You take care of it. Then people will go, oh, nobody's going to bail me out. Maybe I should curb myself a little bit. Maybe I should be a little bit more responsible and either, not sleep around or use the appropriate mechanisms. And then, that makes people more responsible because it gives them their life back. And they say, you're in control of it. It's yours to make of it what you will.
Yeah.
It's not my fault that you got pregnant. And it's not my responsibility to pay for your child. It sounds harsh, but that is the moral thing.
Yeah.
People who have babies should take care of those babies. Now, that said, there will be people who need help. And you mean to tell me that this nation of Christians would not help people? They already do that. The Christian charities go in and have so much more done by the time the feds even show up to a disaster zone.
Yeah.
But then the feds shut down what's working, and then they put in a system that normally doesn't work. I've talked to people who have been through it.
I've been to mission areas where that happens.
Exactly. So we already live anarchy 90% of our days. We live it.
No, I know, and I totally agree with that as well.
They need a government. Like who told churches they need to do that? Nobody. Their religion informs them.
I don't know, but yeah.
Right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's a personal altruism that they, through their faith, do. No government had to tell them that. You don't need government to protect you. Your relationship with God. That's between you and your Creator. If you respect property rights and respect the fact that you have the right to believe the way you do, I have the right to believe the way I do, then that's protected. But what we have now is a system where people want to use their religion to inform their politics.
Right.
And there's a mechanism to do that.
And
And
see,
it violates other people.
I think that's where Andy was a bit confused with the call today. I think his assessment was that people are not that inherently altruistic. That people will not just. There are more people that would like to take advantage of others than there are that would like to just even live by themselves. I think Andy's idea was there are more people that would say, no, I'd prefer to take advantage of you, even if the other option is not to do benefit. If it's not take advantage to do benefit, even if the other option is just libertarian, you do you, let me do me. Like I literally live in the woods by myself. If that's the other option, I think he would say there's still more people that would prefer to take advantage of society. And it just takes one a-hole to mess that up.
You don't, like, that's the thing. Societies are a natural thing that people do. People naturally want to live together and work and help each other, like in little, areas.
Yeah.
You could call them cities. They don't even necessarily have to be a city, a village. People naturally do that because for some people that's what they do. They own shops, they own inns, they do those things. Some people live further out, they farm, they do whatever. And it's the same really now. There are people who live out further than the city. I don't live in the city. Why is that something that needs to be governed?
Well,
I did want to, there's a saying that says, I became a libertarian when I realized that it's not okay to hurt people and take their stuff. And I became an anarchist when I realized there are no exceptions. That's basically why I would say, and I do say, that anarchism, market anarchism, which is what we are, is the fullness of libertarian philosophy. Because the non-aggression principle, there are no caveats to that. Just like there are no caveats to do unto others as you would have done unto you. When Christ said that, he didn't give any caveats, right? He didn't say, unless, they're gay and then we can tell them what to do. Or unless they're, they want to own guns and then, we can tell them they can't have them. Like, no, there are no caveats to that. That's why protecting individuals is the only moral solution.
But I would push back a little bit and say, all right, that is technically true. Philosophically speaking, do unto others, that is technically true. But Christ himself did make an allowance in Romans, give unto Caesar's, right? He did make an allowance for the systems that we currently live under, of saying, look, there is...
You can cherry pick that, and it is a cherry picking.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
I think so. But you can say that that's what he was saying, that's an interpretation, right? But everything else, who gave you free will? God gave you free will. Who is a man to take that from you?
Sure, but you would also have to go back to the multitude of Old Testament examples where God chose specific men to meet other men.
No, because what did Christ say about the law? On these two truths hang the whole of the law. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself.
Sure. But
there is no looking back and saying, well, they did it this way then. It's done.
Right.
It's fulfilled in those two things.
Well, the law I believe he was referencing was an aspect of the old covenant that has been made full under him through the new covenant, right? That this sacrificial atonement that now all things are brought together.
Because his sacrifice got rid of all of the law. Because why? Men couldn't live up to that standard. Because it was technical this and do this and.
But it wasn't the standard that they were meant to live up to. The sacrifice in themselves was what's meant to make the man holy in the eyes of the Creator. And what Christ came for in the new covenant was that's an unattainable standard from the beginning.
God and man,
But the purpose of the old covenant was to show man that old covenant, that standard is inherently unattainable. From the beginning of that covenant being started, you could never attain. It's a karmic wheel essentially. The idea was that you set this legal standard that describes perfection. You must be perfect. You cannot be perfect because you are inherently fallible. Christ comes along and says, I'm now fulfilling that law. It wasn't necessarily meant to be applicable. I personally believe Christ understood there will always be systems. There will always be, maybe not a version of the state, but he recognized in my realm the kingdom of God.
Of the world. When he said Satan took him up and showed him the powers of the kingdom, right? All the kingdoms of the world, and said, I'll give you these if you fall down and worship me.
Well,
Who owns the kingdoms of the world? The prince of the power of the air. Like, that's what that is. Like, I mean, we're getting into a biblical discussion.
Well, that's what I mean. Now we're separating physical from metaphysical. But
I would say that would buttress the do unto others as you would have them do unto you. To me, there are no caveats to that. And I would say that's a pretty pretty standard interpretation. That's why we know that there is truth, and there are things that are objectively, or not objectively, objectively wrong, because I know I don't want to be murdered. And so I know that it would be wrong for me to murder you as well. Like, people do it, and there are societies that make it okay, but that doesn't mean it's the moral thing.
Sure.
So being based on that, it protects individuals. And so saying that I don't have the right to commit violence against you, to do what I want you to do because I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, Christ never said anything that's okay. Like,
Right, but I mean, there does have to be some mechanisms by which Jeffrey Dahmer, okay, he doesn't have the right to commit violence on me, but now, because of the violence he has committed, we do, as a society, say that we do have the right to now commit violence on you.
You don't need a huge United States federal government to do that.
No, but
communities, look at what they call the Wild West that wasn't so wild. They took care. They had laws. They had jails. They had sheriffs. All those things. The United States federal government didn't touch those things until later.
Sure.
So they still had all that. But like, this is one of the things when you get into like the public school system, they're never going to teach you the truth of what you need to know that they're not necessary.
Oh, of course, no.
So that's part of this, is figuring out that a lot of this has been filtered. That's why they call it the Wild West. And most people think about the Wild West, people shooting each other in the streets and blah, blah. And did that happen? On a very small occasion, yes, it did. But it still happens now, too. They just don't frame it in the same context. It's just that then you didn't have government out there, so they couldn't stop this. It doesn't stop it now. It's like it's a paper tiger. They set it up to knock it down, and it's not even true. It's a straw man.
Right, but there still would have to be some mechanism by which you stop people from doing that, right?
And that's called the market and common law.
Right, and see, that's where I'm saying I think part of either myself, which if I'm being honest, or most of my audiences, their misunderstanding or their confusion would be that difference between government and governance.
Right.
Because again, in my mind, if I'm being honest with you in Facebook, it seems like a semantic game. It seems like a game, if we can make governance a smaller word than government, then I guess I'm wondering, where is that broken threshold of where governance becomes government? Is it a case-by-case basis, or is there something that we can clearly delineate of, no, now the form of collective accepted societal governance that's now breached over into, now you're the state, right?
I mean, that is semantics, because it's a way to explain the difference.
Yeah.
Is it necessarily that you couldn't call it government? You could, because government isn't a bad word. It's the way I define it with this. It's most people, when they say the government, they're talking about the state.
Yeah.
They're not talking about actual just running a town, the administration. And so that's why I call it
you heard Amy say rule of law today. See, that's where I think the confusion
rule
is.
Rule of law. That's
people
where
think ANCAPs have rule of law is thrown out the window, right?
Because they don't understand what anarchism is.
Well, the word anarchy itself is.
Because you've had a lot of indoctrination as to what it is, and there's a lot of leftist anarchists who are violent and who are not what I would call real anarchists, because you're going to use violence to claim no, that's not okay. The only time violence is ethical is when it is necessary to protect yourself or someone else or your property. Like, starting the violence, initiating violence is never okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I understand you.
Unless, somebody's coming at you with a knife and you react. Like, that's, they haven't stabbed you. You don't have to wait for someone to stab you, but
I will
they're
say,
already
though,
enacting violence.
It's not exactly either like you're pushing relativism either, right? Because the standard of accepted protecting my property or protecting my community from your violence in Saudi Arabia is to cut the heads off of gay people, right? Which it seems like the majority of that community, the vast majority of that community would probably say, well, I would agree with you. They wouldn't agree with you, though. They would say, no, I'm protecting.
But guess what? I don't live there.
Right.
I don't have the right to go and stop it.
Oh, well, yeah, I suppose that part's true.
Like, I mean, I don't like it. I think it's wrong, but that's something, that's what revolutions are about, right? That's what we do, is we prop up Saudi Arabia and keep that regime in place and
I agree with that.
suppress the people. That's what states do, because it's not in the state's interest to lose that Saudi money. As reprehensible as they are, that government is, what has America done? This benevolent government, this state that people love, it has suppressed revolutions in Saudi Arabia because the government there, the king give them money.
I totally agree with you about the Saudi Arabia thing. I was actually going to bring that up today to make sense of why I think the second use of Trump's veto power was so terrible.
But that's just, I mean, that's an example of how states work. They work in their own self-interest.
Well, but the reason why I brought that up, use Iran maybe as a better example. Saudi Arabia gets too convoluted, but maybe use Iran as a better example. I guess the point I'm making is for a system, at least the anarcho-capitalist system that I've been presented and following, there is a necessary undergirding of an acceptance of possibly a Judeo-Christian ethic. Maybe it's not Judeo-Christian, but there's an undergirding of some version of objectively accepted morality, right? Yeah. Because the objectively accepted morality in the Middle East would not be applicable to what I've heard as ANCAP, right?
And well, you know, if you can look at the factions of Islam, and two, it has happened not only here but there, where they have a civil religion. They've blended religion and politics, just like they've done here. So a lot of those things probably wouldn't happen under Islamic law, or carried out anyways, like they are. But even in Iran, what did we do? We created a proxy war there. We installed the Shah. We've suppressed the people. Like, we've done all.
Don't you start speaking bad about my CIA?
Yeah.
I love my CIA.
Oh yeah. The most evil and corrupt organization ever on the face of the earth, probably. But that's the thing. Like people talk about, we need the government to go fight them. Why? Because the government set up the conflict in the first place. We partitioned the Middle East, which were people who were basically, they had their tribes, they had their conflicts, but for the most part, it was way more peaceful until we partitioned it with no thought of how they had already naturally organized. It's called spontaneous order. It's where people interacting with each other figure out, I don't like that. I'm going to move over here. I don't like those dudes. Like, okay, what's wrong about that? So they figured out that that's a way to remain peaceful, because most people want to live in peace. Violence does not serve most people.
Right.
So most people do want to live in peace. So they figure out in their communities how to do that. Now, there are always conflicts. Like, that's the thing. It's not utopianism, because I know people are people, and there are going to be bad things done in the world. No anarcho-capitalist worth their salt would say that it's going to cure all ills. What it does is it takes the power, though, from a huge state mechanism and gets rid of that, so that the ills aren't magnified by millions. Because when you kill someone, it's called murder, and you go to jail. When they kill millions of people, it's called a war.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I hear you. All right, Facebook, in there. I'm telling you, the best stuff is happening on Facebook. Hold on.
The power, though, from a huge...
It's decent enough audio to put on something. It's still not the best with my quality.
I'm sorry. I know I'm intense because I'm passionate, and sometimes people think I'm angry at them. I'm not angry at all.
I don't think you're intense at all.
Passionate.
All of my audience would say, no. Compared to Mr. Henry, sometimes you're at least not screaming in a microphone.
I've been known to. I try to temper myself.
See, but I think this style of what we do, not having to constantly be beholden to paid segments or breaks or getting into what we're. I think that would work. That's why I think that's why I think your podcast format would work much better for whatever it is that this thing that we do. But I'm not sure how your audience would handle me.
No, I think they would like you because, and this is what I tell people about you all the time. You are one of the most fair-minded people I've ever encountered.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It's very true, because most people, like, you'll ask a question and you'll listen to the answer. That's rare. Like, most people don't. They just dismiss me because you're an anarchist, but you want people to die and suffer. No, like that happens already, and governments do that to people. They make it like, why is the suffering of someone who is having a harder time living their life because the state took a portion of their paycheck, why is that suffering okay, but the suffering of someone who, is just poor and can't afford to feed their kids, like, why is one okay and one not? One's created by people. I mean, a lot of times both are created by other people. But
I appreciate you saying that about me, by the way. If I'm ever remembered for anything in whatever I've done here, I hope it's just, I know this sounds stupid, but I literally hope it's just that, is you ask a question and you actually listen. If anybody ever listened to my program or any of the influence I've ever had, if all I ever leave as a legacy is just simply that it affects 5 people, man, I'm pretty sure we could all be so much better. Because if you just listen to the response to the question you ask sometimes, how many times did it happen today that you said something where I hope either people listening or me in particular said like, "What crap, dude? That's basically what every Republican's been pitched to us anyways for a while. So maybe we should listen to a little bit more of what somebody has to say."
I always tell Republicans, you know, all those freedom things you say that you believe in. I actually believe in those because when the rubber meets the road, I don't abandon my principles because it's not going to get me a political position. It's not going to further me politically, my party politically. I'm not beholden to that. So you have to decide if their principles, like when George W. Bush, we have to suspend free market principles in order to save the free market. That was the biggest load of crap ever. You let the banks fail. You do the things that the market is doing because that's what will help the system. Will people suffer? Yes, but you shouldn't have been involved in the first place.
Honestly, if Bush would have come out, and I think what he was really saying is, look, if we allow the banks to fail, we will no longer be the world superpower. We'll probably be like 5 or 6. If he came out and made that pitch to the American people, 1, I would have respected him more. 2, he might have actually had more support for it. Honestly, the TAR bailout, he probably would have gotten more support for. I know that's a bad way to get support, but most of American people have been like, "Oh crap. Dude, yeah, I don't want China to become the world superpower and back it up with Russia."
Because it's about state power, but that doesn't empower you more. It empowers the state more.
Exactly, but no, to your point, you can't just come out and say, "Well, we can't. We won't have capitalism anymore if capital fails." What are you doing? How many businesses have failed before Bank of America? Come on.
It's a really interesting thing to think. You know, government, they specialize in solving, in harsh quotes, problems that they created. And telling you that the problem was someone else did this.
I think it's a pretty sweet racket.
It is racket is the right word. Racket is right. There's no difference between the state and the street game, except for people are willing to accept the state because we call it magical government.
I don't know. States got uniforms. It's pretty big.
Exactly, and so do gangs.
Yeah, that's
true. Called colors.
Colors.
Like all the. I mean, you look into it. That sounds like hyperbolic statement, but it is absolutely not.
Yeah. All right, Facebook. If you like this style of stuff, eventually I'm going to get on her podcast. There'll probably be a whole thing of that. We should probably come in and do podcasts around with this microphone. Good stuff. But all right, y'all. I'm going to end it there for real. Tomorrow. Hang on. Richard just sent me this. I want to say this is an important guest. It probably is. 2 seconds. Dude, don't make me pronounce this guy's name. I know I'm going to get this wrong. I'll figure it out during the meantime. Have you heard of this person? Maj Toure?
Yeah, Maj Toure. Yeah.
Yeah?
From Black Guns Matter.
Yeah, all right. So he's on tomorrow.
Toure. He's coming on your show tomorrow?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maj Toure?
Maj Toure, I think is how you say it.
Maj Toure. Black Guns Matter, discuss firearm rights and gun violence prevention.
If any segment of the population should be gun owners, it's the African American segment.
Do you know that was one of the primary reasons in, oh my God.
I mean, we should all be, but.
Scott? Is it Scott? Good Lord, dude, I went to law school. Right? Whatever the case was that basically established the 13th, 14th, and 15th, you take a slave, move them across state lines.
Dred Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Dred Scott. Good Lord. One of the primary factors they considered there is, God forbid that we make this person a citizen because then black people will own guns. I kid you not, man. Like, that was one of the main things is, we don't want to make African American citizens because then they'll be able to get guns.
And I think the Dred Scott case,
they'll be able to protect themselves at the point that I was making.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, that was something where someone had gotten their freedom. They had obtained freedom.
That was where they took them from, I believe, Georgia to Missouri. They took them from a slave state to a state where,
I'm thinking of a different one then, because I'm thinking of one where this person was a free man, and they took him into slavery.
Oh. This one was where he was slave, was into to state with a free man. I'm pretty sure it's that way. Yeah, and the slave owner was saying, no, just because I'm in a state where now he's considered free, he's still technically my property. You can't remove my property from me. It's a whole friggin' thing, man.
And then what happened?
They said he's not property. Yeah. All right, Facebook, I'm going to end it there. That's who we have tomorrow. Should be good. Y'all the best in the West and the East. We'll see you tomorrow.